so my champion rises to the top. But all this leveling up means nothing if I don't level up myself. It's the healthy potions I drink in real life that make me stronger. Because you can only rule the game when you realize you are your most important champion. To play like a pro, eat like a pro.
You don't have a chance against me. I can calculate 90 trillion moves in advance. Not fair. Not fair.
Red Bull gives you wings.
Touch me now. I throw my hands, you make me wanna shout out loud. I say a little prayer for it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my, I say a little prayer. Touch me now. I throw my hands, you make me wanna shout out loud. I say a little prayer for it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my, I say a little prayer for your love, baby, down, 'cause I love it. I say a little prayer for your love, baby, down, 'cause I love it. I say a little prayer. Prayer for it. Prayer for it. Touch me now. I throw my hands, you make me wanna shout out loud. I say a little prayer for it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my, I say a little prayer. Touch me now. I throw my hands, you make me wanna shout out loud. I say a little prayer for it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my, I say a little prayer for your love, baby, down, 'cause I love it. I say a little prayer for your love, baby, down, 'cause I love it. I say a little prayer. Little prayer for it. Little prayer for it. Little prayer for it.
It is not crystal clear who the best team in Europe truly is.
We don't know anything yet. Anything can happen, and that's what you want from a league, right?
Fnatic are better in 2020 than they were in 2019.
Offensive flash from Larson and Vander was sent back to the fountain. Let's bounce once again. All over Rogue. 18 kills. 19 kills and one more available. The stretching strike catches on Inspired. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He gets it. Pentakill.
And the redemption isn't going to land. Selfmade comes in though and lands with a hate spike.
Alright, Alfari flashed away from the Supreme Display of Talent, but still got damage done. Nemesis is being eaten away by the Cannon Barrage. He stays alive long enough. Alfari in the 1v2 gets the kill.
I would have to say that I think OG is just draft kingdom.
Seven's gonna grab one. They want to find the follow, but he just manages to walk away. Big damage from Dan. The follow-up, the Infernum, the snares are there. Dan's looking for a victory lap as he just runs through the Excel lineup. Dan, you God, what a cleanup!
Misfits and Mad Lions, they have met a certain threshold that if you do give them an inch, they'll take the whole arm off.
Follow Kazi! There are so many spears! The Ren needs to do a lot of damage though. Push the button! Manages to take down one to cap. Kaiser and Kazi are doing so much work.
This is what you want from a rookie team right there, starting off with a bang, and I don't think they're going to slow down anytime soon.
The Finn is in the back line. Inax almost down. That's one, that's two. Larson and Finn, it's just the rogue show here in the river. Finn gets another connection onto Lorwax. Can't quite find the third, but he flashes forward. It's a double. It's Finn. He's 20 years old, that is.
I think Rogue are a top 4 team. You have players across the board that have the potential and the proven skill ceiling that they can punch with some of the best in the league.
If you want bad news, you know where to go. If you want good news, just follow G2.
Trying to put it down on Mad Lions. Jumping up to the back line. Kazi's still alive, but now he's shut down. It's Caps to take it. He gets one, he gets two, and he's looking for more. Perks on the chase takes another, and G2 will wipe Mad Lions in the river. True shot barrage. Yankov's going to jump into the pit. He goes on double. He steals it. Yankov, so much weight on his shoulders. Give me respect. Hey. Give me respect. Hey.
Welcome back, everyone, to the LEC. I know what you're thinking. What is this? 3 show days in a row? Is it Christmas? No, it's our new playoff format, baby. And today, we are closing out round 1 of the playoffs with Misfits Gaming and Rogue. And this is a direct elimination match. The loser is out, the winner is in. I'm Shox, joined by Ender and Yamato Cannon on day 3. And we've seen some craziness already, haven't we, guys?
Yeah, I mean, days 1 and 2 were filled with high-impact League of Legends, a lot of unexpected, but nobody got eliminated. Today, one of our teams is going home.
I love how you say that, high impact. I mean, that's one way to put it. Now, yesterday, we did see Fnatic set aside OG rather convincingly. It was a 3-1, but I think Fnatic has a good feeling after that series.
Yeah, for sure. I think Fnatic definitely showed the skill of Snowball. Every time they were in the lead, it just looked so quick and easy. They played around in game 3 a little bit, gave OG a fighting chance after OG finally realized that they can't draft full late game 2 games in a row with the Elise and the Yuumi and the Ornn and the GPs. Game 3 looked a bit competitive, but I think Fnatic was just testing some limits with the Azir and the Trundle. Game number 4, Origin got a lead, and then we had that massive upset fail, or whatever you want to call it, around the Nash area where once again Fnatic got a big lead and just took the game home.
Yeah, I mean, this came down to, a very close, game 4 at the end, because even though Fnatic were dominating and they got a little bit looser in games 3 and 4, it still felt like we were going to be in a situation where they were going to close out. But then Origin all of a sudden got this big lead, and as you said, in the river outside the Baron pit, it was just a complete disaster, and Upset threw it all away.
This is the moment, if you want to relive it as an OG fan, but it's a puzzlement, right? Because you want them to step up and carry, and then sometimes things like this happen.
So painful, my goodness. He was just lost, the Lantern was used to bring him back in, and then Bwipo laser sharp with his Aatrox that was 0-3 at the time, finds the kill. Nemesis was very strong and he cleaned up the rest of the fight because Upset was the main damage dealer. He was the guy who was fed and he dropped the ball.
He did drop the ball, but in the end the entire team dropped the ball, and I think it was especially jarring to see what Fnatic did with their lead when they did get it, because they don't play around when they have a lead, and I think that's something that OG will have to try and work on. Player of the series, key player of the series was Nemesis, which to me was definitely a welcome surprise, as not often the guy who's in the spotlight for this star-studded team.
But he was so influential in this matchup, especially games 1 and game 2, right? Like, Fnatic proved that when Nemesis is unlocked to be able to push his wave and roam around the rest of the map, they look almost unbeatable, right? Like, as soon as he was finding those dives up towards the top lane, it just didn't really seem like Origin stood much of a chance because it was just frankly too dominant.
I think Nemesis' performance also highlighted Origin's biggest weakness, is that Nuktak for the almost the entirety of the season got to fend for himself, and felt like Nemesis had a lot of space to push freely. Xerxes usually interacts with either top side or bottom side, and Nemesis really delivered on 4 different unique champions throughout the entire best of 5.
That he did. A bit frustrating for Nukeduck. All these new players seem to be running it past him, and he still hasn't had his hands on that title. But of course, OG isn't out. Now, it did kind of wake up an interesting discussion about the state of the league because before the start of playoffs, I think everyone had a clear idea of the strongest team in the league, probably G2, right? I think if you asked anyone, they would have said that. But the last 2 days have made it much more difficult. Is there anyone who does seem like the strongest team in the league right now after what you've seen?
I have to go with just Fnatic based off of performance throughout the regular season and also the performance here in the best of 5. It's always hard to gauge because we don't know how G2 is going to bounce back, because obviously they played worse than they've had. Mad Lions had a wonderful performance, they played super good, but how much of it was G2 just playing bad, right? I think Mad Lions is fantastic, but I think Fnatic has showed us the highest level of class and play, because the moment Fnatic is ahead, they just snowball so cleanly. They play together in a wonderful fashion, and I think they showed a lot of good creativity here in the best of 5 against Origin.
I think it's important, though, to say that it is not clear-cut, right? Like, you can say Fnatic had a great split and played well in their best of 5 yesterday, but I don't want to discount G2 because of their best of 5 against Mad Lions. They were still our best team in the regular season. They still maintained so much of the strengths that they showed in 2019, and in the same vein, I'm not going to immediately say Mad Lions, because they beat G2, are now, like, the clear-cut favorites. They proved something, and they proved that G2 are beatable. They proved they belong here towards the top end in the playoffs, but this is still a very murky race to first for me.
And I love how you summarize that there, Ender. When we look at the bracket, it just makes me feel like it is one of the most open brackets and possible runs in the playoffs that we've had, honestly, in many years, because we have Fnatic domination, we had G2 absolute domination, right? But this seems like it is truly a much more open race, and I'm not going to say that it's completely everyone has the same percentage chance to win, but the chances and the stakes are definitely better for everyone involved.
I think G2's loss just opened the gates for everyone's imagination to run rampant. I'm looking at that lower bracket, and whoever, if Misfits or Rogue want to make the run, they have to beat so many crazy good teams. I think no matter what's going to happen, every matchup is going to be super exciting. We have quality across the board.
That we do. Just to explain kind of the bracket if you're new to the format, of course, Matt is playing Fnatic next week. Who wins that goes directly into the final. OG, because of that loss, now is going to go up against the winner of Misfits Rogue, and then has to go up against G2, and then needs to play another best of 5 if they even want to make it to the final. And Misfits and Rogue are playing a direct elimination best of 5 just today. So definitely heating up things here in the playoffs, and they're absolutely crazy, which we love. And simply put, our playoffs have been absolutely bonkers. And what that means is memes, baby, and Twitter jokes and everything. So we got into social media as we do and looked for some spicy tweets, some interesting takes on the happenings of the last few days. So let's take a look. What is the first one, production? I can't see it yet. There we go. I think G2.
This, of course, is probably after game 5, because that was rough.
Yeah,
the 16
absolutely.
kill
So.
Olaf.
We were supposed to rate these, but we forgot to get pages and pens. I just remembered that.
I've got pages and pens.
You got
right
it?
here.
Okay, you can rate them then for us. I think this is pretty smart. I didn't see it. Okay.
Gonna write something down?
Write it down.
I have a
That's,
spoon.
7,
I'll give it 1 spoon.
7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 and a 1 spoon. That's a pretty solid meme overall. It wasn't revolutionary, but Dawn Arts, his play on and off the rift, both very solid.
Yeah, he's a legend, of course, in the regional leagues as well, and in memeing. This is our next one. I wonder what best of 5 it is about, and if it's more funny than the one we saw first. Here we go. Origin, what's going on? And a glad lion. Origin's trying to get in the meme game. This was before they played, by the way, so that's why probably they felt more confident.
These are 2 old memes, right? The what is going on is a 2019, and the Glad Lions is, of course, the sad plane .jp. That's like an actual boomer esports meme. So I'm gonna go ahead and give that a half star here, half completed star.
I love how we're changing measurements. Like first it's points, then it starts, then it's amount of potatoes out of 10. Like I don't know what we're gonna end up with, but we have a half star.
Half a star,
right.
okay?
Half star. Next one, we've got 2 left. It was good, but I think we should crank up the heat. G2 Fnatic, just backdoor them. Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, they both had to... well, G2's didn't work. Fnatic's didn't work either, but at least they won the series, and we have some Trundle Hilly highlights, because he's an absolute madman. So I would definitely think Fnatic did a bit better. What do you think, Ender?
I think that's a 5 out of 7 for me.
5
Pretty solid all around. Yep, that's the one.
Okay, so 5 out of 7. One more. It was especially about the G2 and Mad Lion so far. We had one about Fnatic and G2, and this... Oh, from the man himself. For context on this one, G2 has actually posted this picture many a times, often before losing in a week or in a world final, saying, yay, just out celebrating the 3-0 or the 2-0. And in this case, it's, because of grabs and because of them losing. I like it. I think this one takes the cake for me, especially because the self-burn is very rare.
2 spoons.
No, 2 spoons? Yeah, this one for me has to be a G2 out of 3. Yeah, that's my rating.
Okay, I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for memeing the organizations, the people, and being so involved with our playoffs, even though they are crazy. We very much appreciate it. And keep sending in your crazy stuff at LEC. On a more serious note, even though the playoffs have been crazy, we do have to kind of make sense of it and also of the regular season. And as you know, we announced our all-pro team yesterday. Now, in the next couple of days and weeks, we're going to announce MVP, rookie, and coach of the split. So we wanted to preview rookie and coach today. And coach is one that is always, I think, very difficult because we don't know what actually goes on behind the scenes. But Yamato, you as a coach yourself, how do you kind of judge who has been the best coach in the respective splits?
I think the only thing we can do as spectators is basically rate the roster and see if they overperformed or underperformed. I think there are some cases, especially in this split, where you can make an argument for Misfits. Everyone kind of thought that it would be a bottom tier team. They ended up going to playoffs. They're playing today. Mad Lions as well. Team filled with rookies, with Humanoid. Mac on his first kind of coaching kind of session, and he's doing super well. And Mad Lions got 4th in the end. You can make an argument for Fnatic, even though it's a team with so many veterans. It's a team that, everyone thought, oh, this is going to explode, this is going to implode. Mythic kind of pieced it together, and Fnatic is definitely looking way stronger than they've ever had.
I like it. So looking at what you expect and what is possible with a roster to what they actually achieved, I think Mac would definitely be a good choice. I mean, Mad Lions are top 3 in playoffs. That's crazy. Another award that we'll be dealing out is the one for Rookie of the Split. Again, regular season performance. And I'm just going to throw up some of the names that I heard mentioned in the past couple of weeks, starting with Kaiser. Of course, he had a fantastic performance also in his first best of 5, but I think all split long, he's been solid as a rock for this team.
It's so difficult to rate supports, especially in Europe. You know, you look at Hylissang and Mickey, they've been the staple, but honestly, most of the time they are quite inconsistent in their performance, and Kaiser brought something else. He's been very, very consistent, understands how to roam on the map, he's on the right place at the right time most of the time, plays all the new champions. There was the Set, and he plays the Tarek. He is very, very good mechanically, and he's the most consistent thing about Mad Lions. Very refreshing to see this from the support role, because usually rookies that pop off are the ones in these pop-off positions like AD carry, mid lane and so forth, but Kaiser definitely delivered.
It was also just refreshing to see like new support talent introduced to the LEC, because I feel like it's been, a little underwhelming for a while now outside of that top end. There has been the clear gap, of course, and to come in along another very impressive rookie class. Like 2020 has been one of the best years I feel like in recent memory for rookie players in the LEC, and he has just sort of carved a name out for himself, even on a roster filled with other very, very talented rookies. Kaiser is definitely someone to have your eye on going into the rest of the playoffs and the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And with it being a successful year, it just shows that the ERL leagues, the local leagues, are just thriving and delivering more and more opportunities for these rookies to step up and get here. And I think one big example of that is also Razork. He came into Misfits and had a lot on his shoulders. He was all of a sudden the jungler for Febiven, of course, a legend in his own right, but had to work with kind of the new dynamic of that team and develop tremendously well.
Right, this guy had the biggest turnaround of any player in the league, really. Comparing his first week to the rest of the split, like, he came in week 1, terrible misplays, decision-making errors, and I'm like, what is this guy doing here? But through the rest of the split, like, he immediately spun that around on a dime, was a leading factor in that big Misfits winning streak through the middle of the split, and it came down to just his early game impact. He finds a way to average more kills early in the game than almost any other jungler in our league, and it's also the fact that he can work with his laners too. He can work with his support to get these ganks happening that makes him special.
And I also think what Yamato said about Kaiser kind of goes for Razork as well, and it is more, or very impressive I should say, to see the kind of roles like a jungler and a support who have so much to do within a team and have to pay more attention than just to their own lane, but actually to a lot of different lanes. They have to roam, they can impact the map in its entirety, and the fact that it's rookies that are stepping up in these roles specifically is kind of insane.
It's super, super cool. I think in Razzle's case, I think he's very fortunate to have Amazing behind him as a coach. He has so much experience, and even though Amazing wasn't always considered like the mechanically best player, he was always a very smart player that almost always improved the macro of the teams that he joined. I think that kind of experience behind someone that is a mechanical jungler, Razzle has been stomping solo for a very, very long time, I think is just the perfect fit right there.
Yeah, great stuff. And tonight, of course, Razork makes his debut in the LEC playoffs as Misfits take on Rogue.
Misfits has had their time this split. They've had their wins, they've had their moments, but right now, I think it's time for them to go.
Minutes in the midst of the entire team, the Haymaker, the jump back down, and that's going to be all that they need. Now Larson left leaving forward against the reset. He can jump one more time over into the pit, goodbye to Shadow. That's going to be 4.
Fight top lane. Down there flashing in. Look at where the power could bench.
It's a battle between me and Vander because Bibo is better than Hansama. I think I can beat him on the lane.
On the Rift, I'm going to want to smash it. It's going to be a pretty close match between us.
Oh, I absolutely love the style of our videos, our tease videos, and the music beds under it. I'm extremely hyped for this one, and I think maybe some people say, well, G2 played the first day and then Fnatic, how interesting is this one? But I think this could be one of the closest best of fives we've seen, and we've already seen a G2 versus Mad, so that's saying something, just because it is two teams that have so much to prove. Yeah, they do. Nobody wants to answer, but I think they have so much to prove. I think Rogue and Misfits, respectively, right? Starting with Rogue, maybe a team that last year, of course, came onto the scene very, very hot. They got to playoffs. They got past that first round of the playoffs, and now they have to do better. But it doesn't seem like they have the same fire as they did. So I think they're going to want to show up in these playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. I think ever since we had, you look at the Rogue's performance the last 2 weeks, it's been very underwhelming because they went 0-4. But Rogue's story, in comparison to last year, has been very, very different. Last year was the story of, this underwhelming team that was kind of trying to figure out which players they wanted to field. They had one split together with this particular roster with Finn and so forth. They went into playoffs, did super, super well. They had that fantastic, funny ending with the Corky running into the fountain. And then everyone thought, okay, this is a team that, coming into next year, we have some higher expectations. And this split, everyone's been talking about how Rogue needs to be that fourth place team. And I felt like in the last weeks, they haven't really proven that. So definitely, they need to prove something else not coming into playoffs.
Well, it is about living up to those expectations, right? And we had the other rookie teams around them, like the Misfits and the Mad Lions, sort of sprint ahead in almost really unexpected ways. So this team needs to buckle down and get back to the things that were working for them, Larson in the mid lane, super successful, mechanical player, Finn popping off with his rotations. These are things they need to fall back on that made them so good.
So also the story of Misfits is also so unique because it's so easy to forget all that big PR nightmare they had in the off-season, the AMA, everything got downvoted and so forth. The easiest way to make sure things like that go away is through great play and good memes. Misfits have been posting them. I remember that cold open mimic, from Brooklyn Nine-Nine with "You Are My Fire." I don't remember the name of the song, but you get the meme. They also played super, super well. First half, they were dominating with their own type of play, and Misfits definitely proved all the haters wrong because everyone thought it would be a bottom team. I thought it would be a bottom team, and now they're here in playoffs looking to once again prove themselves, similar to Rogue's position, because these last weeks have been underwhelming.
And Yamato, what's your read on the fact that they went from a slow start to an insane winning streak to, murky weeks at the end? Is that reason for concern in your mind?
Honestly, after speaking to Amazing on Euphoria, he talked about some of the issues, and those were the issues that you could see from outside. And I think whenever a team addresses this and tries to address it through play, I think is the right approach. They pretty much had playoffs secured because of XL fumbling and so forth, so they were trying to address those issues right away. And the biggest issue was them playing through bottom. The meta right now is very bot lane centric because you can play into that dragon, swap into that Rift Herald. Top side of the map is very Maokai centric and GP centric and so forth. Many weak side top laners. So Misfit need to show us that they've learned how to play this way, because in the last weeks they tried and it looked very, very rough.
Yeah, they tried a couple of things, of course, getting ready for those playoffs, and you mentioned Amazing. And of course, after an eventful career as a player himself, he's not part of the Misfits coaching staff, and we're catching up with him before this best of 5.
Thank you, guys. Laure here, joined by Maurice today ahead of Misfits versus Rogue. Thank you very much, Maurice, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
On paper, this should be one of the 2 even series we have in round 1, next to Fnatic versus Origin. So what is your take on the matchup and how these 2 teams will fight each other?
I'm actually not sure if that we're that even. I think we're kind of playing different sides, I suppose. So maybe that's the interesting part about the matchup. So I do think that we'll have a lot of early battles where we'll definitely fight a lot and figure out which team basically has a better macro late game.
And what would you say are the biggest strengths from Rogue coming in here against you guys?
They're really, really good at setup play. So anytime mid or support is basically free to roam, I think they're really good at utilizing that. So I think Thunder and Larson are both big playmakers, and honestly think that they have kind of a unique champion pool that kind of differentiates them from most other teams, especially in the top lane where Finn is his Kled, Irelia, these kind of champions are way different to most top laners champion pool, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
You're mentioning Finn and his champion pool. So is there any champions you should get away from the draft, like the must bans on Rogue's side here?
No, I don't know if there's any must bans, honestly, because we'll definitely have prepared properly for it, and we kind of know what a champion pool is. So I think it's more about adaptation and figuring out if the champions that we selected against this champion pool actually work on stage just like they do on paper.
Let's take a step back here. When you look at Rogue at the beginning of the split and Misfits at the beginning of the splits, how did the 2 teams improve, and why should Misfits win here?
I mean, we should win based upon the fact that we have had a better trajectory, even though our second half of the split was kind of weak. I think like Rogue the last 2 weeks has been abysmal, so based upon that form, I think we should win. But it's more about the way that we analyzed and have been open to the meta. I think in the beginning of the season we're really closed off and we kind of tried to find our own style and it worked, but you can only hide from the meta so long, and then at some point you have to adapt. So I think we've done this a little better than Rogue did because they're still really focused on their champions and the champions they like to play.
And looking at this series and the fact that we're switching from best of 1 to best of 5, do you think it's going to impact you guys? Febiven is in the team. You are also coaching the team, so you can bring this veteran experience when it comes to approaching best of 5.
I mean, I hope so. If not, then I think we're kind of doomed. But I think it's actually going to work out. I think Feby has been someone that has always been known as a clutch player, so I expect him to step up. And especially given the increase of pressure, I think especially the rookies will kind of almost get a stage vibe again, because obviously playing in-house is more or less and have those be LEC games is kind of different to actually being on stage and actually having that pressure on you. And I think a best of 5 setting, especially when Silver Scrapes hits, I think is a lot different to just playing a best of 1 online.
I couldn't agree more, and I can't wait to see Misfits in best of 5 series. Good luck, Maurice, on this one, and thank you very much for the interview. Now back to you guys.
Awesome. Always very impressive how they can keep so still during those interviews, but amazing, emphasizing that we want to keep evolving. We don't want to just stand still, and I think that's very important for a newly formed team. Now, when we get into the nitty-gritty of the team styles of these two teams and how they match up, Yamato, how would you characterize Misfits and how they play and win games?
I mentioned it before in terms of what they tried to improve on in the last week. Misfits, their win streak was based on the fact that they played something that no other team was doing. It was a lot of mid 2v2 into top side, a lot of dives, a lot of play around Dan, and that's what worked. Afterwards, Dan was very good with snowballing that pressure into bottom, and the play from Bevo and Denik was always that patient bot lane that didn't die to ganks. But when everything shifts and they need to play into bottom side because of draft, gangplank and Ornn mid, then it looks kind of rough, and this is what I'm hoping that Misfits have kind of figured out, because the meta, even though maybe you can push for a solo lane meta, right now with the Maokai roaming around, it's kind of difficult. Sure, you can play 2v2 top with the tree, but it's not the same like the other carry champions that we see, because Sett is banned all the time.
Right, I think Misfits caught on to something pretty special towards the start of the season, where they just got the fundamentals of team play down very early, while all our other squads were, still coming together, trying to figure all these things out. This team got it quickly, and so much of that was actually led by Razork and Denik, that jungle support duo, because that's really the framework. Those are the two positions that can sort of determine how your team plays out, especially the early and mid stages of the game. But how Denik got out of bot lane, paired up with Razork to attack around mid lane. They devoted so much time around vision, around ganking for Febiven, and then that allowed that transition of pressure towards topside as well. They really did attack the map from the center on out.
Well, glad that you mentioned Denik, because it seems like he does get kind of not mentioned as much because Kaiser has been doing so well and stuff like that, but it's kind of the same story for him. He's put into this team with a whole new configuration. He has that rookie status, and he immediately has to roam a lot, has to have that jungle mid synergy on point if his team wants to win. And I think that's something that he doesn't get enough credit for, and works really well in the machine of Misfits so far.
It's sure. you have these players, right? So many of our rookies jumping in and performing so well that I think you're just unfortunately gonna have people fly on the radar, but that does not take away any of the ability or the credit these people deserve.
Yeah, a lot of praise, I think, for Misfits. I think we're focusing on the ceiling that they can have and that we did see. Now I want to turn our eyes on Rogue, who a lot of people are hot on, cold on, myself included, because I don't think I've seen real evolution from them this split, and I'd love to know what you guys think and what's their DNA? How do they win games? How can they win games? And what would we like to see?
I feel like the way I like to describe Rogue is, they are the apprentice of many but master of none. They don't have anything that they go to as a recipe to success. They're kind of good at basics and good at playing around every lane if necessary. I think the key weakness for them is when they play against teams that add additional steps in terms of contesting pressure. For example, let's say Rogue's game plan coming into the game is mid prio into bottom dive. That's a very simple way of putting it. Maybe the enemy team is going to send their support into mid lane to impact that mid pressure, and all of a sudden Larssen doesn't have that prio, and those extra steps can't be followed. This is where Rogue need to address those issues, because teams are getting better and teams are adding extra steps in terms of pressuring when you want to get it done. Rogue still have some pop-up performances, especially with Larssen. You see the solo kill on Forbiven, sometimes with Finn in the mid to late game fights, but they need to get there, and sometimes their early game looks quite lackluster.
Yeah, and I mean, this is when, in these best of fives, is when they have to consistently show up every single game. And Larssen is a big point of that. And he was a guy we hyped the most coming out of last year. We also had Inspired on that roster, who got Rookie of the Split. But we want to see more out of them. And I think especially that Larssen versus Febiven matchup will be so telling as to how this is going to go.
And this is a really interesting matchup because when you go back and watch the VODs of when they faced off against each other in their 2 regular season games, Larssen looked so good. He was outplaying mechanically, very strong individual. But I think Febiven's almost a little bit of a cheater, and I don't want to take any credit away from him because he's had a phenomenal split. But again, Razork and Denik and the amount of time they can spend around mid lane can definitely skew this matchup Misfits' way.
I think when it comes to Forbiven, we need to keep in mind that was one of the first games that Misfits played when everything was in disarray. They kind of looked terrible in that first week. Forbiven, I think, as a player, if you look at Misfits and how they're going to beat Rogue, I think is always everything going to come down to how well Forbiven orchestrates his support and the jungler to play around mid lane. I feel like Forbiven has been very intelligent in terms of knowing which champion to pick, and I think if Misfits are going to take it away, it's going to be through this veteran man.
We are primed and ready for this matchup. Last rather best of 5 of week 1, and only one of these teams will stay in the title race. Let's see if it's Misfits or Rogue.
Thank you very much, Shocks. I'm Daniel Dracos, joined by Indiana Frostgurn Black to bring you the entirety of this best of 5 series between Misfits and Rogue. And we've gone back and forth over the last week of preparation for Osk, deciding is it Misfits favored, is it Rogue favored, and it's honestly a hard call.
Yeah, we've had several discussions, and we have to kick it off starting with the stakes of this match. You heard it from the analyst desk. I'm going to repeat it now. This is it. This is the elimination match. There are no more second chances for Misfits and Rogue, whereas G2 and Origin will live to fight another day.
And that puts so much pressure, I think, on both of these lineups. And while you can talk a little bit about Rogue's experience in playoffs last season, they're still not as seasoned as many of the players here. And when you look at it, Febiven and Vander are really the only 2 players in this matchup that have a ton of playoffs experience to pull from, whereas I'm actually a little bit nervous for Misfits' younger players, less experienced players in this best-of-5 high-pressure scenario.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of about who's going to get the team to really rally around them as we're finally heading into the draft phase, and I really want to gravitate and grab this Syndra that's being banned from blue side. A lot of the time, Syndra has risen up in priority. You've seen her crop up over the course of the playoffs already, but to ban her from blue side, Misfits haven't played it mid or in the bot lane, so we just simply don't have the tape to show that they can use this as a flex pick, which is something to watch as Misfits continue to rise over playoffs, or if their run stops short here. Can they play the Syndra? Will they constantly have to ban it on blue or red side? And how does this hamper them in draft?
And obviously you want to ban it against Rogue, because while they've only played it one time, Hansama brought it out against the Mad Lions. It was a crushing victory in favor of Rogue, and we've seen how good Mad can be, so a pick worth respecting. Now it's the Ornn. Interestingly, the Yuumi banned away as well. Senna, Varus, and Frost. We talked a lot about the bottom lane prepping for this matchup, and it seems like both teams are sending a lot of bans in that direction.
Yeah, and Rogue did this the last time that they faced. They threw a lot of bans at the bot lane in particular. It was actually through the support pool, however, targeting out Denik. And this time around, it's really focusing on B-Voy. So the analyst just talked about it. Again, it's going to be another talking point that we're going to hear over the course of this series. And it's, can Misfits bot lane, B-Voy and Denik contest with Hansama and Vander? Now, that said, I don't think that Vander and Hansama are necessarily the bot lane that go for those kills. Not that they can't. Like, we know Hansama can lock in something. Oh, God. We know that Hansama can lock in something like a Draven, like a Kalista, and really kind of step two. This is not what I was expecting. This was the other big pick that B-Voy really hadn't shown, and I was really scared for Misfits that they hadn't pulled out the Kalista.
All right. Here's the thing, folks. We came into this Frostgren, and I think we were on nail on the head. We're like, bot lane, probably not going to be the center of the attention. Top side, jungle, mid-match, if that's what we're looking at. Support's maybe going to roam. But everything is now thrown out the window because we have a Kalista and very likely a Taric on the bottom side as that Aatrox does get locked in. A Draven with a choice of support for Rogue, and it seems like all eyes immediately have to shift to that bottom side of the map because somebody is dying. I don't know who yet, but someone will die in the first 5 minutes of this game, just about guaranteed.
Which is also why it's really surprising that the jungle pool is going to get super hard pinch as we go in through the next stage of bans, because it does feel like it's either going to be the 2v2 or probably more closely a 3v3 bot side.
There's going to be a lot of pressure, but now we have Draven Thresh up against the Taric Kalista. See what the choice of summoners here, if anyone wants to get more or less aggressive. Now as we enter the second ban phase, jungle mid can be the sole attention of both teams. Sort of some truly crazy flex picks here, which kind of evens the playing field as Azir does get taken off the board.
Yeah, so the strategy will be that you either ban out champions that are super easy to blind if you're on Rogue side, because Misfits obviously don't get the luxury of having counter pick on red side, whereas Misfits will either try to trim the pool of things that will be particular counter matchups that they don't like for their mid laner, or will try to pinch the jungle pool, though it can be a little bit dangerous because obviously if you pinch jungle twice here and then Rogue are going to get the priority pick of the jungler immediately out of this, it just limits it even further. So they just want to get rid of those super obnoxious champions that would really disrupt kind of the 3 champions that they have right now.
Gragas definitely one of those that makes a lot of sense. The flash body slam, very difficult for even a champion like Kalista to interact with. If she can get away from that CC, she's nigh unkillable, but if you ever lock her down, she dies very, very quickly. And now we have the Azir and the LeBlanc, two of Febiven's most successful champions when we look at individual performances. Obviously the Azir with a slightly better record overall, but I think LeBlanc still has to be respected as Misfits really debate their last ban. One's already been spent towards jungle. Will they take away a potential safe blind pick from Rogue? Gonna have to find out.
You could take away something like the Sejuani here if you wanted to double down onto it, or you just, again, target ban a specific champion. I guess it's going to be dive side, so okay, Elise makes sense, because Renekton Elise is such a potential threat for topside dive because you have the mixed damage, and Dan really doesn't want to be on the receiving end of Inspired and Fen 2v1ing him.
And I like how deep Rogue are willing to go into the AP jungle pool. Clearly Misfits spotted out, they're like, we're not giving you an AP jungler, we're not letting you split your damage type, we're not letting you dive top lane. And Rogue are like, that's fine, we've got another one. What else are we willing to play? Straight into the Talia, and we've seen this champion be very good at both setting up bot lane dives when it was played by Caps paired with a Pantheon, can now also be used as that AP threat on the top side, and Misfits going with something much more standard in the Sejuani.
And also, just much better in terms of how it's going to work around the map. Like, Sejuani works so well for champions like Aatrox, any sort of melee-based champion, so it gives them a decent 2v2 top side, as well as then also really accents the bot side 3v3 with all of the CC between a Kalista, Taric, and now a Sejuani.
And one of the interactions that I love the most is going to be the Talia up into the Kalista. Obviously, the Unraveled Earth, the little minefield zone, is going to make it very difficult for Kalista to play fights if Inspired manages to find a lead. But the final pick will now be the Zoe. And it's going to be looking to set up picks as we get further into the game. Something that Febiven has tried his hand on, but not necessarily my favorite pick to see. Rogue, of course, is going to get the luxury of having that counter pick in the mid lane.
And this is a pick that Febiven has gone towards multiple times when he needs a blind pick safe option, and Larson then responding with the Tristana. So we can take a step back, we can look at the compositions. Already you have really good kind of breakpoints across both these compositions about they can be strong on early, mid, and have late game scaling. I do really favor Rogue's scaling potential, however, comparatively to Misfits. I think they're on slightly more of a timer, but we will check in terms of execution on these drafts as soon as we hit the Rift.
And once again, big pressure on both these teams. This is the elimination map, 5th versus 6th. There is no luxury of double elimination when you're at the bottom of the bracket already. And both teams betting on their bottom side a little bit. The Draven versus the Kalista. It is certainly going to be one very explosive early game.
And speaking of explosive, I'm really surprised that Misfits allowed Rogue to get some agency onto Larson. The Tristana pick has been a big one for him on getting pressure or priority in terms of pushing in that lane, and when Larson's able to do that, he immediately starts to roam and look out into those sides. Now, Tristana not necessarily the greatest champion at ganking those side lanes, but it almost doesn't matter for Larson. He's going to find his way out there.
And that's exactly what I want to see in a game like this, is a ton of roaming, explosive plays. It's Misfits versus Rogue, and it's starting now. And here we are on the Rift. Frostkern. God, there's actually so much to talk about. I thought we were going to have a much more like stable, controlled, slow, steady draft from at least one of these teams. We talked a lot about kind of clash of styles coming into this. You heard about it on the desk as well. Rogue really good at these kind of set plays, really smart, can kind of play through any lane. Misfits a little bit more explosive, a little bit more volatile. But it feels like both teams have just thrown all their eggs in the explosive basket. Like this is a very, very... let's just say, kind of balanced on a knife's edge sort of game. Anything going wrong can just instantly throw this game in either direction. It's
development and evolution in terms of expectations and playstyle. So the thing that I really want to underline and point out, though, is the fact that Dinnick is on Tarek and Vander is on Thresh. And the reason why I want to point this out is that Misfits are more of a team that was about playing kind of like three-man mid lane. Like Dinnick is a heavy roaming support, whereas Vander has kind of taken a bit of a backstep. Like he'll usually team up with Inspired kind of around the mid game, but during the lane phase, he usually doesn't leave it very much. And with Tarek being chained to Kalista, there's not as much incentive for Dinnick to roam around and to provide Febiven pressure and then rotate Febiven out into a side lane. Whereas Vander on the Thresh has the opportunity that he can actually look for these roaming plays instead of Larson actually coming to him. So I'm curious if the teams will actually change their identity. If this is going to be Misfits playing three-man to a side where Rogue usually play that, and if this is going to be Rogue playing three-man mid lane where Misfits usually play that.
And really, when we look at the bottom side, the second you see Hans Sama Draven, anytime you see Hans Sama Draven, you have to get a little bit excited because while it is 0-2 this season, it's pretty much dominated every lane that it's gone into. And this is one of the matches where it's not necessarily going to be about the mid lane or the top side. Inspired is already heading bot lane, may free up Vander to roam, but first he's going to be looking for some kills of his own. B-Boy and Dennick, though, just going to back off, just going to concede the wave here, not going to take any risks. Dennick lays down the ward, and they're still going to go for this, but Razork is on the way in. They have to be careful. B-Boy throwing down a lot of damage. Halo Blade's already going. The Ignite's already come out. B-Boy, he can dash to the rocks if he wants, but stunned up, locked down, Inspired is going to get taken out, but first blood going over to B-Boy. That's going to be 2, and this is immediately disaster for the Rogue bottom lane.
And Rogue are a team that are so well known for their early game because they always come in with an early game plan. And you could see it. They wanted to do a super early dive, but they just bite off way more than they could chew. Misfits with a really good read and then being very cautious and calm with their cooldowns here. There's no flick that ever came on. Like B-Boy eats a lot of the initial damage, but they're not able to kill him through the duration of it, and then he finds the pop on the Rend and the first blood.
And it was only level 2 for Talia. I don't even think she had the flick. I think she had the Unraveled Earth and the volley. So Inspired going for that aggressive gank, trying to be unpredictable, but sadly, Razork is exactly where he needs to be. And now immediately we've got a 1k gold lead for Misfits, and while Draven is usually a great answer into the Kalista, if B-Boy gets far enough ahead, that's just not going to be viable anymore.
See if there's going to be any follow-up damage here. Nah, it's a pretty big oopsie moment, and now it's kind of a question about how do Rogue salvage what happened here. Now, they still have decent kill pressure because, like you said, Draven is still a decent matchup into Kalista, but they want to now make sure, I was going to say, the backs came through. They wanted to try to make sure that B-Boy sits into this lane as long as possible, so they're not competing with this back disparity. But
we'll get the chance to shove the wave in, however. We'll get a back of their own off. Dennick here to make sure he soaks up all that experience.
It's not that bad. Just a Vamp Scepter. He's got a control ward. Draven's going to get something fairly similar, so I still don't think that it's just over for Vander and Hans Sama down here, especially because they retained Cleanse and Flash on Hans Sama.
The bigger question for me is now, what do we see Inspired do as he is starting to fall behind a little bit in the jungle? Obviously sucks to lose that red buff in the play, but now Vander's going to be in trouble. Forced to use the play here as B-Boy just continues to chase. Why I find Kalista so obnoxious, Frostkern, and it's like you don't get to decide when the trade begins and ends. Kalista always gets to decide.
Yeah, especially when she has Hail of Blades, Kalista. We've seen it a lot globally. Obviously, it's been playing in the top lane and now in the bot lane. We'll see if she continues to be a pick kind of over the course of the series, if Misfits feel comfortable flexing the champion, just like we've seen in the LPL.
Will be interesting. Larson getting his first recall off, 40 CS under his belt, should be enough to buy something pretty significant here for the mid lane matchup. We'll see what his focus is going to be. Boots 2 for now, just to allow him to be a bit more aggressive in trading, rather than going for anything like raw damage. Could be the Bork coming out, mostly used for melee champions, but still a solid item. Is Finn and Inspired are fishing for this play here on the top side. Dan
You're looking for stun into flick.
Definitely doesn't know what's happening. Ooh, early on the flick though, Dan flashing out. A little bit of miscoordination, a little bit of nerves for Rogue. Important to note there, 0-4 in the last 2 weeks. They're on a 4-game losing streak. They have not won an online game yet. So sad to see some of those nerves potentially still showing through.
And unfortunately, now it's going to be punished pretty heavily. As you can see that Razork has jumped the wall. He's now on the Cloud Drake. Inspired has now gone for an attempted dive. That one failed. He now shows for a lot of wasted time into the top lane gank. That one has failed. Yeah, you got the flash, so maybe he visits and he tries to get something back for Finn on that Renekton. But so far it's led to a gold lead and now a Drake lead for Misfits.
And Razork definitely not a guy that you want to let get ahead, and most importantly when he's on Sejuani as well. That's level 5 to level 3, Frosco. We're going to have that Sejuani ult up and available very soon, and that makes me very nervous, especially for the top side of the map. Razork now just clearing out Dragon down. We'll see when Herald becomes the next objective. Obviously still 2 minutes till it spawns, but a surprisingly explosive early game, I would say, for a Rogue versus Misfits matchup.
But here comes kind of the three-man side lane that we were talking about with Rogue. The fact that they don't pull 3 members into the mid lane, they move their mid laner towards the side as Larssen is now caught off Feb event. Here's Razork.
Has Cleanse, has Flash. Ooh, going for the insect with Tristana, knocks him back. Razork taken down. That's going to be huge. Good experience for Inspired, but now Inspired has to be careful. Stolen Flash coming out. Stolen Chilling Smite as well, but Febiven not willing to burn his real Flash there. Sees Finn coming down and does not want to push for anything else.
So finally something pays off for Inspired, fishing around for that gank, trying to catch someone into rotation, hunting in the jungle, and it's Larssen who helps him out here.
And I love looking back at this play because Larssen is so willing to play aggressive. The freedom the cleanse gives him to just go all out on a play like this.
And it was the thing that Misfits knew that Larssen and Inspired were in here, but just didn't really account for the burst damage. So Razork gets separated from his team there into the waiting arms of Tristana and Talia.
Very difficult to handle, difficult to deal with as well. There we go. And looking in across the map, right now the good news is Finn is doing quite well in his individual lane matchup. Things are going to stay pretty even, but the last time we saw these two guys go head-to-head, it was a pretty decent lead for Dan in a set versus Aatrox matchup, so Finn being even right now feels like a pretty good sign overall. Also has the Grievous wounds already, which is going to make Dan's life a lot more miserable.
Yeah, and the last time that these teams faced, it was week 5, and Finn was not feeling as pleased as he is right now. Misfits repeatedly dove him and really tried to put him down, and that kind of almost printed out a blueprint for a lot of teams that led to Rogue's big downward spiral for their 4-game losing streak running into playoffs. And a lot of teams were putting big targets on Finn's back and just contesting his champion pool, contesting him into lanes, and really trying to put him in the pressure cooker.
Overall, I think Finn is one of those players that we've seen these huge moments of brilliance, but also just this season it hasn't felt as good as it did last summer, where he was, he came in after spring replacing Prophet, hasn't had that same level of performance. We'll see what he wants to do now, as Misfits have already rotated their bot lane to the top side of the map. Hansama's going to be left alone on the bottom side to take a few tower plates, a bit more gold in his pocket at the cost, potentially, of this big map objective. Will not be able to steal it away with the Draven ult. I would say uncomfortably close, 1.5 seconds off, maybe 2.
Attempted dive bottom, however, because obviously now that Misfits have Herald, as soon as they use it, they're going to get the tempo advantage. So the response will be, what do Rogue do with that? And it's to threaten the dive, to force Dan to step off the tower, and to continue to funnel plates and springboard this Draven.
And we just kind of wait to see exactly how many stacks he can amass before they find that first kill, if they can find that first kill here. Knockback there, Larssen going to cleanse and leap out to safety. Dan burning his ult here, but Inspired is coming over the wall. Can he hit it? The Blast Cone taking him away. A beautiful flick from Inspired over the wall, saving Larssen's life.
I also think that was a bit ambitious for Misfits to try to force that kill and that catch there. Maybe just trying to get more summoner spells out of Larssen there, but he's able to hop away. And finally, the Herald goes down just to match the pressure that Rogue have started with, again, Draven getting solo EXP gold and plate damage down there.
And you can see the gold is still actually very, very close, all things considered. All that solo farm has balanced out the kill and the assist that B-Boy has picked up, and while the turret going down is a pretty big boon into B-Boy's favor, Hansama is going to get a bit more time here on the bottom side. Vander coming down as well, but Dan getting here should stop the turret from going down.
And it's really only the plates and the First Blood that are keeping Kalista ahead in terms of gold value across from the Draven. Because you can see Hansama, he's done a much better job at the CS, and we talked about this, that even though Kalista got the First Blood, the sheer kill threat, pressure, and just straight up dueling potential of Draven, he's one of the few champions that can match Kalista in top lane and in bot lane.
And that's the thing, I think that I'm always just nervous about a Draven in any game, is that all it takes is one kill for him to take over a matchup completely. For him to find that extra gold, for him to snowball ahead, and his itemization can just be so oppressive, but has not gotten to that stage quite yet. Fevivin interestingly stopping off for the Seeker's arm guard on the way to the Luden's Echo just to make sure that he's a bit more safe in lane. And slowly but surely, it feels like Rogue are building up actually pretty massive advantages across the map, Frostburn. But now Misfits are looking to get something else done. Larson will leap out to safety once again. Sleepy Chub Bubble not going to amount to much. But look at topside. 30 CS in favor of the Renekton. We got 20 in favor of the Draven on the bot side. Mid lane's about dead even, but otherwise, things have turned very quickly in the favor of Rogue, despite what were a few pretty poor early game plays.
Because it feels like Rogue are such a calm team that if you can't contest them into lane phase and really put them down, again, as some teams have done by targeting guys like Finn, then they're pretty fine to just kind of sit this one out. Yeah, it feels like they've given Misfits, the first Herald, they got the first Drake, but Rogue don't have to force anything right now. There's a lot more onus on Misfits to be proactive at this state in the game because they are playing with something like the Callista and the Aatrox.
And the question for me is, when do we finally see Misfits kind of group as a team, try to force something more with these skirmishes? Haven't really seen the Taric ult or the Callista ult leveraged quite yet as a potentially aggressive tool. Maybe that changes here, though, as Rogue feel like they're getting a little cheeky, but Razork is here on the flank. Can just be the 3v3. More damage, most certainly, in the favor of Rogue, however, even if the CC is in favor of Misfits, so both sides will back off. Infernal Drake going to be the focus here from Razork, but he has been spotted out. Inspired can look to contest this one. Denick going to make sure that both parties are kept healthy, though. They try to go for this. B-Boy, though, now has to be careful. He's going to walk through the Unraveled Earth, but just in time, the Redemption comes down. B-Boy's taken out Inspired. Hansama now on the run. TP coming in. Taric ult going to make sure that no one else is going to go down on the side of Misfits. And now Dan is on the hunt. Fevivin on the backside, disrupting Finn, making sure he can't get here. And Draven, if he was hoping for a cash out anytime soon, it's not going to happen. B-Boy is the only person making money on the bottom side.
Okay, that is worst case scenario now if you're a Rogue fan, because this is what cannot happen. You cannot allow Callista to remain relevant longer by getting a springboard and a snowball. This is very similar to what Mad Lions were able to do against G2, whereas when you funnel all this early gold onto a Callista, she gets to that initial item breakpoint that much faster, and then as she springboards ahead of the clock, she then stays relevant longer.
And it is also the Manamute Draven, which I'll hold a thought on that one because Finn just got absolutely destroyed. While Razork is taking Dragon and Dan is taking plates, this is kind of the, you said it was the worst case scenario for Rogue, but this is like the best case scenario for Misfits. They're getting everything they could possibly want.
Okay, what happened here? No, we're not even going to see the mid lane play, we're going to see the bot lane. So they've got control. Rogue have control wards right here. They know that Razork is going for the Drake, and they're just trying to immediately delete whoever they can catch, which is going to be the bot lane here. I think they wanted to kill Taric pretty instantaneously, but the damage was actually just really mixed. And even though that Taric ultimate comes down, it doesn't really block anything. And at this point, Rogue have kind of already lost the fight, and now it's like scatter, every man for themselves. You can see Larson was walking across mid lane. He's like, ah, it's over. I think I'm gonna go back top and farm some things.
And here's like kind of the worst part, right? Is that I look at that play, I'm like, wow, Taric already has Redemption. That's so crazy. But no, again, in the LEC, Zoes are incredibly good at picking up Redemptions. It was Fevivin's Redemption from a mile away in their own red jungle that gave them enough healing to keep going on that play. Absolutely ridiculous character sometimes. So Fevivin finding a way to get an assist in that fight despite mostly not participating.
And now that they have this lead on Callista and then using Zoe to really threaten Siege and continue to snowball this game by forcing down towers. So I actually really like this play from Misfits.
Ooh.
Tell him, B-Boy. Tell him that you're a carry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love the confidence from B-Boy here. Hail of Blades just allowing him to get that quick trade in. And when Callista starts to snowball, the damage just gets, honestly, just way too oppressive for most of Rogue to deal with. They have the luxury of a lot of point-and-click CC in the form of both Tristana and the Renekton, but they have to get in range and in position to use it effectively, which is not going to be an easy task. Rogue just trying to get what they can here on the side lane, bit of scraps as they push in for the tier 2, and a 2k gold lead and 2 dragons for the side of Misfits, and they're not done yet. Vander just next on the menu, one shot as Fevivin comes over the wall.
And just such an easy mistake, as I'll hold it for a second. Dan.
Gonna get flicked back. Going to be difficult for him to make it out of this one. The Grievous Wounds make it pretty easy for Finn to just drive by on that one. Well played by Rogue to get something in that exchange, but Razork in the meantime is just starting up this Herald.
But so far, kind of across the map, like Misfits have played this, you know, early mid-game transitioning out of lane phase so well. That trap on the mid lane to hide into the brush, to know that Vander and Han Sama were going to step forward and kind of farm the incoming wave, snatch grab them with the Sejuani ultimate that now gives them access to the Herald. Super clean play for Misfits, and just it's kind of like one of those blueprints that you can see from a very well-coached team.
Yeah, and this is a team that I think we talked a lot about because they're so young. Them getting a Game 1 win, them finding that momentum in a do-or-die series is huge, is massive, and they most certainly have the momentum. It is only a 1k gold lead, but when you look at the items, you can see Blade of the Rune King, the Luden's Echo, the very interesting Muramana Draven. I can kind of see it. Obviously, every time you catch an axe, you get to use your W, and you get to stack it up, but not something I'm used to seeing at all.
So it has been cropping up a bit in solo queue. It's sometimes paired with the Sanguine Blade, so obviously looking more for a dueling-oriented Draven. It looks like he's going to go the BF sword route, so I think we might see more of a normalized build path here from Han Sama past that.
I wonder how crazy he's going to get if it's like Essence Reaver just to keep the mana up, just to keep the Muramana damage up.
I mean, that's kind of like the idea here, but I mean, he certainly has the mechanics to do it.
Look, I love it. I don't know. I'm going to be honest, Frost. I'm glad you know about it, because this is one of those situations where I'm just going to trust that Han Sama knows what he's doing.
It's definitely a thing. It exists.
All right, yeah, like, perfect. That's good to know. Not something that I would have expected to see built, but I do enough crazy stuff that who am I to judge anyone else, so. B-Boy, though, grabbing bot lane tower. Meanwhile, on top side, Rogue are responding with pressure of their own. They're doing a pretty good job of splitting up the map as best they can. Problem is, they got to give a lot of respect to Pepavin and Razork, especially now.
They have to give a lot of respect to B-Boy. He's not a top lane Kalista, so he doesn't necessarily have the EXP, but he's the same level as Dan. Finn's only a single level above him. Like, if he actually pieces out into a side lane, there's not a lot that Rogue can do. They'd have to two-man him.
And to be fair, I think that's what they did, Froska. They just left him alone. There's like, to me, that's not even respect. That's like, we're scared of you. We're going to leave you alone. You're going to do what you want, and we're going to try to play 4v4 against the rest of your team.
And what's cool here then is, you know, it's always the question of, could Misfits not carry through B-Boy, or did they ever choose that just wasn't the playstyle that was going to work for them? And B-Boy is showing here that, yes, Misfits can do it now. And if this is something that they came to relatively new, like they've just been training, or it's been true the entire time and they just chose it strategically as like not one of the things that they ever wanted to do, like this is the perfect time to point it out as they're now pushing for a mid-inhib.
Backing off because they don't want to take the inhibitor and give anything else away. I like it. Love to see it from Misfits. And you're right, because Frosk, B-Boy's stats suck. He's like lowest in damage per minute of any 80 carry. Like outside of those really good Aphelios games, I was not impressed. But this game is showing us the same level of performance that we see when B-Boy's comfortable on Aphelios. I didn't think he was going to have another champion like that, but now Kalista's going to change the nature of this series completely.
I mean, it's kind of like the idea that if you only just came to the LEC and you saw Rekkles playing Fasting Senna every single game, you probably wouldn't think of Rekkles as a big, hard carry. But like, because you have the tape that you've seen Rekkles kind of be that 1v9 type of ADC, you're like, he can just play both styles. But we only have tape of B-Boy's responsibility to Misfits being playing weak side. It doesn't mean that he can't play strong side. It just means that the team hasn't needed him to do it yet.
And that's what you want to see. Anytime we head into playoffs, anytime we head into best of 5, that's the real time to prove yourself. A single best of 1, it's easy to discount, it's easy to feel good about, but a best of 5 is so career-defining, especially in the first playoffs here in the LEC for B-Boy. And really, 3k gold lead, triple dragons that are on soul point. This feels like Misfits' game to lose at this point. Rogue are going to have to show us something creative to get back in this one. They do have double 80 carries, which is going to be huge. It is going to be a lot of damage as we get later and later, but once again, 9.5k on B-Boy. That's a big number. He's working towards his third item. We got 1.5 for Han Sama and Larson. Larson very close to his second, but he's just going to be a very difficult champion to interact with.
Yeah, I think the game does get harder for Rogue to play out at this point, just because it's not just B-Boy who's pretty far ahead. It's also the fact that Febivin, like if Zoe contacts anyone, she's still going to do massive amounts of damage. She's got so much wave clear into her kit now that she can just hoover up everything and allow Kalista to play out into these side lanes. So Rogue are going to have to be pretty creative using the mobility of Talia, playing out to either Tristana or Renekton on these side lanes to maybe pick up some kills to stall the game out, and then hopefully Larson is able to take it over later on with Draven.
The Tristana here obviously going to get progressively stronger. I like the Bloodthirster coming in from Han Sama. Will make it a little bit harder for B-Boy to just out-sustain him in any kind of extended trade.
I think
of course for Misfits,
issue, however, is that unless Larson is... I don't want them to get caught here. Hold on. Unless Larson is competing for priority, because Baron's now in play and you have a Kalista, so the Baron burn threat on Misfits is so high, it's really dangerous because Draven can't push waves very quickly comparatively to what Misfits comp can do and what the Tristana can allow for them. So Larson almost has to be grouped up in this mid lane now to prevent things like this happening, because Misfits set this up perfectly.
Blue Trinket's coming down. Rogue, this is a huge opportunity for them to turn the game back, but if they fumble here, it's all but certainly a loss. Sleepy Trouble goes over the wall. Febiven now has to run. Larson sees his opportunity to try to turn this fight against them. The Baron's only at 3k health. Rogue can come in here to try to take this one away. Finn gonna dive right into the back line. Riser blocked down, but that's a big Taric ult. Finn can't find anything. That was so clutch from Denik. The timing could not have been better, and now Rogue are on the run, but the Baron has reset. Misfits will be forced to back away. Rogue will live to fight another day.
And that is the Taric ultimate that she liked to see right there. The first one, Denik, I'm going to write that one off. That one didn't necessarily count. That one was clutch right there. So Misfits now push back onto the Baron. The jungler is around, but you're not just competing with the Smite. Again, you're competing with the Kalista Rend, which we saw it happen in the LCS. I've seen it happen in the LPL, so there's still a chance technically here for Rogue.
It's happened in the LEC too, Frosk. It should be impossible, but it's definitely not. 2k health getting lower. It's all on B-Boy. No, he's going over the wall. He doesn't even want to risk it. He wants to get one more. He's trying to cut through the entire team. B-Boy, the heal coming out. The Baron has now already gone down, but Dan comes over the wall. Oh, it's a whole team affair, and this is a side of Misfits. I have not seen the aggression, the bloodthirst, the Baron. It's all for Misfits.
Remember the name. It is not Boy, it is B-Boy, and he is proving that he can be the carry. He flashes the wall and immediately grabs hold of Inspired. That was some BD energy.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, the ultimate result of the fight is inconsequential to me just because of how aggressive it was. There is nothing quite like watching people aggressively flash over a Baron pit to get you hyped for a series, but... Whew. All right, Misfits. This is one-sided. This is not necessarily what I was expecting whatsoever. And now Rogue have gone from, hey, look, there's some opportunities, you can wait, you can buy time, to the classic death brush. When all else fails, just try to survive them. Ooh, Gromp placed well, very unintentionally blocked Sleepy Trouble Bubble. Now Finn might be able to make it out. Double dash away to safety, but there's the ult, and Finn is going to have to say night-night. B-Boy unstoppable, 5-0-3.
It is desperation for Rogue right now. They know this is pretty much going to be it on this type of push. Now, the good thing is that Hansama does eat the wave, so it's not like Misfits can immediately rock up into the lane and then try to end the game off of push. Surely they're going to try to go for this mid inhib. Although as I say that, they all peel off. They're like, see hero, kill hero. We know Hansama is over here. Find him.
I like it. They're like, you will never cash out. There is no money here for you.
Oh, they want soul. They want soul.
That also makes sense. I prefer the they really just want to kill Hansama narrative, but, you know, to each their own. On top of that, they have their lead. They're so far ahead. They're pretty much guaranteed to get this soul, and it's Ocean Soul. Ocean Soul is the victory lap soul. You get it, and you're literally just waiting for the game to end in your favor. It's nigh impossible to beat.
It's also the fact that Kalista is about to get the GA, and then once she has that, like, it's good night, sweet prince. Can't do anything.
B-Boy is merciless. And obviously he has the best scoreline, but the whole team actually has been playing very, very well. Denik, you mentioned the Taric ult. I think we've also seen Razork doing pretty solidly, and sadly it just feels like Rogue, after those first few fumbles, haven't really gotten a chance to play the game at their pace.
And, you know, maybe this is a wake-up call for Rogue. Maybe they were gambling that Misfits wouldn't play it. We've seen other teams really respect the Kalista, banning it onto red side. I thought for sure when we were discussing this, we're like, okay, if Misfits are on red side, bans will probably be Syndra, Senna, Kalista. But Rogue let it go through, and Misfits skill checked him on it. We can play it.
Absolutely did. Wall comes out from Inspired, just to buy space for them to clear the waves here. And overall, look, when we talked about B-Boy potentially playing Kalista in this series, based on how his MF looked, I didn't think it was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to work. So when Rogue picked Hansama's Draven, I was like, bot lane is over. Bot lane should be done.
That could deal with the Kalista, but
yeah,
things cracked on the rest of the map.
Maybe we get to see a more even game state. Maybe Rogue look to run it back in game 2. Feel like execution is the issue and not composition or draft, but something that we have to see how both teams will want to approach the best of 5. You've already praised Misfits coaching staff. We'll see how deep the preparation runs.
still need to close it, however, as Larson has his cleanse, so he feels very brave to do this, as well as the Dark Passage right there. Knows that if he eats the wrong end of the Sejuani ultimate, that he should be able to walk out of that one. And again, Rogue's composition is so reliant on Larson's wave clear since they have a Draven.
And Draven fully stacked now on the Muramana, so we'll be able to really hit like a truck if a few of those autos can come through. Febiven delaying the actual Zanyas, just sitting on the Seekers, as he does now have the Morellos, so could in theory be vulnerable to one of these kind of plays. Does not even have a stopwatch.
This is the deepest of flanks, and the desperation play here. I don't think Finn's going to get there in time, though. No. Rogue have timed it well. Okay, here we go. Last chance.
Going to try to dive into the back lane. Very easy for Tarch to throw down the ultimate the second he thinks an engage is going to happen. Kalista ult now coming up. B-Boy can throw it back to the rest of the team. B-Boy, the Taurik ult now coming down. They're going to get nothing. Rogue suddenly find Dan on their backside. Hansama has been caught out. He's been left alone. He's going in on Vander instead. He knows the Lantern can come out to save him, but Febiven leaping forward. That damage is way too much for Hansama to deal with. He's going to be forced away. Larson still playing very aggressive, just trying to clear the wave, knowing that the minions are needed to end the game. But Misfits just set their sights on top lane Inhibitor instead. Rogue looking ready, looking like they have to go for round 2 if they want to stay alive in this one. As Misfits going to break top lane Inhibitor. Are they going to back off here, or are they going to push for the end? It looks like they will play it safe and walk away.
And that's now 2 inhibs down to Misfits. The Elder spawning in 3 minutes. The Baron will be up soon as well, so there's plenty of options again for Misfits to eat up the rest of this map, to look for that final push. And Rogue, they managed to stay alive. That is a deep teleport. Where's it going?
Oh.
He just got question mark being.
Wait a second. Hello?
Maybe they thought that they had just walked back. Maybe Rogue thought that Misfits had walked back down mid lane and that they would potentially push someone out. Oh
no! Okay. Alright. How many embarrassing moments is this first round of playoffs going to yield for a wide variety of different players?
You just gotta shake out the jitters. Just like stretch. That's what I would do if I was Rogue's coach. I'd be like, everyone stand up from their seats. Just like shake it out.
Walk out, take a break, come back. It was a good scrim. The best of 3 starts now.
They're out of position for the mid lane push. Oh no.
Oh, they're just going to walk in and take this. Are they going to try to just force? I guess they're going to try to force an Inhibitor down. Obviously, Larson can just strut through that tower.
That's literally the only option that they have.
B-Boy is going to delete this objective, as meanwhile, Febiven's just pushing in the mid lane, and Dan's going to be there to make sure that not too much else falls down. Has to be careful, though. Larson is going to get the knockback and will leap out to safety. Larson doesn't even get the tower. Draven ult to reveal what they already know is happening, and this stage of the game, Misfits, I don't think that there's really any way outside of a massive throw they can lose this one. 6K, 8K now in their favor after that Baron. Ocean Soul. They should just be able to walk down mid and end this game.
Yeah, and so now the question is, you know, what do Rogue do? Do they leave open the Kalista again? Do they themselves try to get it? I can understand why, you know, leaving it open when you have Hansama as such a proficient Draven player. And I don't think that this was like strictly the 2v2 issue that went wrong. Like, this isn't on Hansama and Vander. It was a collective team issue. Like, several things went wrong back to back for Misfits to snowball this as effectively as they did. But also then huge credit to Misfits. Like, once they had the snowball, they did not let go.
No, and this is the thing about Razork. He might be in trouble now. Might not be the best time to praise him, because he has just gotten caught out, but luckily Dan is there, and he's nigh unkillable. Gargoyle Stone Plate looking like a healthy, balanced item on the back of that one. Rogue just do not have any kind of damage to kill the Sejuani, and sadly, that was it. That was the last play. That was the final nail of the coffin, and Rogue hammered it home themselves as Misfits just wiped that fight.
And here comes the TP to grab the minion wave. Larson was trying to do his job, push down some minion waves, farms, continue to stack that CS, but like you said, a Misfits game 1 are going to walk this one pretty cleanly in.
Incredible start for this Misfits lineup. 15-2 to kill score. 9K gold in their favor. A very easy, very simple closeout. Respect to Rogue for trying to make a play happen to turn the game back in their favor, but because play after play did not work out for them, it is going to mean the end for Misfits. Misfits going up 1-0 in our first game of the series.
And Larson on the back half of that play was actually trying to kill Sejuani, so attempting something there, but that kind of felt, I don't know, that's a painful way to lose. It just felt like Rogue lost control of the game so early on, about as soon as we opened up into mid-game, and then just never really got it back, taking several bad fights, particularly around that Dragon Pit area.
Yeah, and it's just it's rare, I think, to see Inspired plan so many ganks that go wrong on the execution level. Not something that I'm used to seeing from him. Of course, I'm not used to seeing his Talia either, so maybe just a few things not working out quite as well as they did in scrims on stage. But now that's going to be enough from us. We'll be right back after a quick break.
Charged up. Hello, everybody. Let the game begin.
I throw my hands, you make me wanna shout out loud. I say a little prayer for me. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my, oh my. I say a little prayer for your love, baby, don't, 'cause I love it. I say a little prayer for your love, baby, don't, 'cause I love it.
Welcome back, everyone, to our coverage of the LEC. This is the last best of 5 of round 1 of the playoffs, and Misfits has taken a stand against Rogue in Game 1. That was just about as convincing as a victory I think you can get out of a first game. Let's start by taking a look at the picks and bans, and what was quite interesting to me is that immediately, straight off the bat, both teams elected for some interesting bot lane picks that were meant to make plays.
Right, the Kalista came in immediately for the side of Misfits, which we know can be very strong on this patch, especially as like a flex pick between top and bot lane. And then what was so interesting to me was how Rogue basically said, okay, if it's top lane, we've got Renekton and Taliyah, and we're just going to camp it to death. If it's bot lane, we have Draven Thresh, and the idea was, once they knew it was going to the bot lane, to try and camp that lane early and make Kalista's life miserable. It just didn't work out in the end.
I think the key thing is, as Enda mentioned, just the fact that the draft is so oriented about early game, because we don't associate Draven or Renekton, Thresh, Taliyah with some heavy, intense scaling. It's all about that impact that you have early on, and it requires such a sense of precision, because the moment you slip up, champions that are so strong in team fights and that scale so well in Kalista and Tariq Sejuani, you're going to struggle against, because these are very tanky champions that are going to have so much armor later on. Your composition is almost primarily physical damage. If Taliyah's behind, she clears so slow, and it just is a disaster from that point in time where we had that crappy dive.
Indeed, you brought up the crappy dive, so let's take a look. Of course, Rogue did want their bot lane to go better. They have a lot invested in it with Draven, but this was just very unfortunate and a very bad start for them.
Honestly, it was quite predictable because the wave was stacking, and I think the beauty of this is we put so much emphasis on Misfits and their bot lane. The Tariq flash stun was timed very well, because most Tariq players, they need to time the flash with the moment it stuns. If you flash earlier, it's easy to flash it. I think the execution was good. Sure, Draven got the wave here, but any type of kills that you get onto Sejuani or Kalista is going to be so meaningful, because if Misfits is even at minute 10, that means they are super far ahead with the composition they're playing up against.
Right, and I want to say, like, hey, Razor, great job being down here. You counter-ganked it, but it was just a red buff topside path from the Taliyah immediately down towards bot. So Razor's just sort of, like mulling around, looking to go for his full clear, and then randomly there's this Taliyah down there in the bottom lane too. So it ends up being a very nice counter-gank for them, and really just sets the whole stage here for the rest of the game, where the early snowball wasn't able to happen.
Here also on the top gank that we have in the B-roll, this is supposed to be a kill. Aatrox walked up so far, you have the dash from Renekton, and then when Aatrox flash, you flash after with Aatrox. Instead, you had Taliyah starting the CC chain, and that's such a kind of rookie mistake that you maybe do in a scrim game. It can't happen when you have the composition that really needs to snowball. That was a kill on Aatrox if you played it good.
Yeah, indeed. And I think yesterday we were applauding Fnatic to playing to their lead and continuing to play well and pushing the game forward. And I think we saw that from Misfits as well, because even though Rogue had some good moments, Misfits from that point on, and especially B-Voy, didn't let up. And I was definitely surprised, and happily surprised at that, to see B-Voy stepping up and being given the trust from his team.
Yeah, clinical performance. I think B-Voy, the strengths of B-Voy have always been, he doesn't die in lane, very patient, keeps it up. Now he showcased the Kalista, which is a key pick that not a lot of AD carries have managed to put in the effort and time into learning. Being able to pick Kalista in a series like this is fantastic, and Misfits show a very strong footing here on the bot lane in the first game.
Yeah, and B-Voy went from being, a shadow of the kid to the man, flashing over the Baron wall, getting really aggressive in these fights. It's always fun to see, too, especially on a champion like Kalista, where when you can take over a team fight completely, and you go that extra mile, and to see that he recognized that was great stuff.
And on top of that, in kind of the developing story of Misfits, I know there was a lot of flack thrown B-Voy's way, and I think rightfully so at some points in time. We have to be able to say that the fact that in this first game, they are prepared to give him agency and he shows up, I think that now in the psychology of the next games to come, that's huge when you can start off like that if you're Misfits and B-Voy.
Yeah, I also think that it's not necessarily like B-Voy's gotten like a ton of flack thrown his way. I would say early on in the split, that was definitely true, but people just realized, hey, Misfits don't tend to play play through that bottom lane. He's more of a role player. He'll sit down there in lane and show up and do his job in team fights, but it's not going to excite you. But even then, we heard other pro players speaking very highly of Bvoy, and the way he plays the game, so we knew he was good. It just wasn't like he wasn't the star on this team, so to come out and show that extra side is always going to be good when you are in the best of fives now.
I have to echo that sentiment. There is a class and a skill in terms of playing weak side and making sure you don't die to ganks. I think it was just on the aggressive point that the criticism was aimed towards Misfits as a whole. I think still this game didn't really prove us anything because it was Rogue that had the initiative. They had to snowball early. They didn't manage to do it, and the next draft could look completely different. So Misfits still playing through bottom, still unanswered because this game was very easy for them to execute. They showed a great level of skill in terms of, after they got that lead, they just snowballed very well, very confident around that Nasher. They looked completely in control after those kills on bottom, which is very, very positive, but the next draft could change everything and it could highlight the weaknesses or strengths of both teams.
Oh, you're covering all bases. Like, you can't flame me for saying that. You can't flame me for saying that. You can't flame me for saying that. But on the other hand, of course you are right. This is a best of 5 series. It never comes down to just one game, and it can definitely evolve. But I want to then look at Rogue from that point of view, which they will have to do as well. And you could narrow it down to it was just the execution errors in that bot lane and that top lane. If that doesn't happen, you have a completely different game, right? So what would you like to see Rogue do in Game 2?
Well, the thing is, as you said, right, it could look completely different, and they could have executed on this, snowball through bot lane style composition. But that being said, I feel like some of the best things we saw from Rogue during the regular season was actually more scaling options, right? Like Larson on the Vladimir. This game is on Tristana, who can be strong in lane, but also scales very well. I actually prefer a Rogue style of team that is more focused on getting, into the later team fight stages, when the action is less driven by, a Thresh-driven bot side of the map to when it's actually driven by Finn on a Kled that roams through the top lane. So I think that there are some of those pocket picks that I would like to see them fall back on towards, because that's sort of the peak vision of Rogue in my mind.
For me, I think it's important that in the draft that teams manage to find balance. I think in this draft, it was so full-on early game with the Renekton, Taliyah, and then the Tristan in the mid lane, which was honestly the best pick out of the whole draft in my opinion. The Thresh Draven, very good matchup into Kalista Taric, but then even if they got that lead, how easy would it be to finish the game? We saw in the Mad Lions versus G2 series, where Mad Lions had this full-on early game composition. They were 5k gold ahead, a little slip up, and all of a sudden the composition that scales better and had some kind of balance in it won out the game. So I think it's all about finding balance. Make sure that you have a basic plan for Rogue, maybe through mid lane into bottom, maybe finish playing something that scales a bit more heavily and is going to take care later parts in the game, making sure that every step of the game is covered. When you reach that mid to late game, what is your game plan? Because then again, if for some reason Rogue was ahead this game, maybe it would be too difficult to get through all of those tanks and get to Zoe. It's all about, making sure that you cover all bases.
And they seem to have something in mind, because Rogue have selected the blue side for Game 2, so we'll see if there is a change up there. Their plan, however, it backfired in Game 1, but we will see if Rogue can even up the series when we come back.
And welcome back to the LEC Playoffs Round 1. It's our final best of 5, Rogue versus Misfits, and Misfits took a commanding Game 1 if you're just now joining us. And Frostgren, this was, I think, safe to say unexpected.
And that's exactly what needed to happen if you're a Misfits fan. Rogue are a team that play incredibly well by the book. So to beat them, Misfits needed to take it off script. And having something like carrying through Bvoy or Bvoy picking up the Callista, even if Rogue did expect it and thought that Hansama's Draven could counter it, is exactly the wrench thrown in Rogue's plan that Misfits needed to get an edge in this matchup, which a lot of people have Rogue favored in.
And now we have to see what the adaptation is, right? Because now we have Rogue switching over to the blue side. And as we're a few minutes away from Champion Select, you have to wonder how much their strategy changes, because there was a lot of things that we saw in that draft that you heard Yamato talking about. He really loved the Talia Thresh Draven combo, but we just saw the execution not be there. So is it a situation where they try to run back something similar and just say, hey, we'll do better this time around, or do they just scrap it and go back to something maybe they've used in the past?
I think what's going to happen is that they're not going to get their hands on the Callista. I would imagine that Misfits would ban it from Red side now that we know both teams can play it. I think, again, Rogue kind of gambled on what they thought was going to be a good matchup for it. Maybe they give it away and Bvoy's like, I'll play the other side of the matchup, I'll play the Draven, I'll show you how the dive is done. And I know that when we were doing some investigating, you found that Rogue were actually playing a lot of the Tahm Kench Fasting Senna.
Yeah, we were looking into solo queue records or just earlier today, and we saw a lot of things that Vander specifically was busting out. Hansama playing the Fasting Senna, obviously Vander trying things like the Nautilus, you expect it, Set, you expect it, but he was getting really weird. He was trying things out like the Maokai, and now I wonder if they've decided it's time to unleash that, because it was banned in the previous game, but Fasting Senna, you have to imagine, does give your team a lot of power in that it frees up your support to try out some really crazy things.
And we thought that that was kind of going to be the champion that the series might be built around, similar to what Fnatic were doing with the Fasting Senna. So we'll see if Rogue get their hands on it. I expect the red side bans for Misfits to be Syndra, Senna, and Callista. We'll see how close I get to that prediction here, whereas Rogue can start to target ban, and we'll see where the priority pick is going to be. If maybe it's one of these prized 80 carries that gets through, like the Aphelios that Hansama really likes to pilot, or maybe a priority jungle pick.
And I'm curious as well to see kind of how Bvoy's performance changes over the series, because as good as that game was for him, as highlight reel worthy as it was there in the early game, was a lot of other people setting him up for success, and see if the draft can kind of do something similar for him this time around. If he gets another powerful duo like the Taric Callista, or if he's kind of forced into a position where he doesn't get to take his priority pick, where he's forced into something he's less comfortable on. Obviously the Aphelios, something that we love to see him on as well, but if it's something like the MF, I'm absolutely terrified because he's 0-4 on it, and it just does not look like his champion.
And the thing is it's a name that we didn't expect to be coming out of our mouths when talking about Misfits and a victory that they took away, saying Bvoy repeatedly. And the fact of the matter is that in this elimination match, I kind of look at both these teams, Rogue and Misfits, and I didn't expect either of them to be here. I expected Rogue to be that top 4 team that we had kind of been predicting them to be this entire split. They were supposed to be the one that went into the upper half of the bracket. They were the chosen team of kind of our group of rookies to ascend to the next level, and no one expected Misfits, I think, to even make playoffs after a disastrous 2019. So while we're now moving into game 2 of this series, it feels like no one expected it to be Rogue versus Misfits, and both of these teams have had this glimpse of glory, this taste of victory. Misfits peaking up at first and second, Rogue proving that they can sit at the table with the big boys, and now they're just starved for recognition. They want to win this so they can remind everyone that yes, it wasn't just a fluke, it wasn't a flash in the pan, we deserve to be here.
And absolutely, and that's only doubled down by the fact that both of these teams had, honestly, miserable final weeks. They were both up for 4th place. They could have made it. It might have been a miracle run for Misfits, but Rogue were in the driver's seat to take it themselves and collapsed as they got close to the finish line. But here we are now in picks and bans for Game 2. Rogue on the blue side, Misfits on the red. Misfits continuing to ban the Syndra, something we brought up last game, Frostgren. Looks like they're not ready to show us the Bvoy Syndra quite yet. And the Ezreal going to be taken away as well.
I like the Ezreal ban just because it fits in line with what I think Bvoy really was well known for, which was playing weak side. And also it frees up Denik. Whenever you have a champion like Ezreal or even Varus, they can hold the lane by themselves, Ezreal with his safety, Varus with his range, and then unlock Denik that he can roam pretty freely without having to worry about Bvoy. And again, it's the fact that Misfits are kind of like a 3-man mid team, whereas Rogue are a 3-man side team. So the bans are saying pretty consistent for Rogue, putting a target on Bvoy's back, and all I need is that Callista ban, and I'll have gotten Misfits bans red side.
Ooh, GP. They're not banning, but of course, Misfits potentially have to be nervous about getting him to Kalista as well. Hansama has played one game on it. He won the one game as well, and it's something that he has been spamming to a certain degree in solo queue, so could try his hand at it too. And I don't know if it's something that Misfits want to deal with, because B-Boy's history going up against Kalista, he was one of, I believe, Karzi's victims, just getting absolutely eviscerated in lane. And it looks like, yeah, he doesn't want, he's happy to play it, but he does not want to be the one to play against it, and that frees up the Aphelios that you were talking about, Frostgurn.
You can't see it, Dracos. I just did the victory laugh. You asked me what would be the priority pick then. I was like, pretty sure it'll be Aphelios. I think it's Inslok right there for Hansama. So not really showing a lot. A champion that both B-Boy and Hansama have showed consistency on. So, that's now 4 potential ADC picks. Now 5 with the Aphelios tonight. Like, how deep into the champion pool is B-Boy going to reach? Is he going to go for that 0-4 misfortune?
I absolutely do not want to see it any time ever again. Sadly, B-Boy has had a lot of great games. None of his misfortune games have been those games. And for now, going back to something that I think we both prefer to see him on, a lot of safety in the Xayah. Maybe not something that he can solo hold the lane on, but obviously a get-out-of-jail-free card in that ult, also with the potential to set up Denik to play Rakan, is pretty solid for Misfits.
Yeah, and Xayah Rakan, one of the few duos that can bounce a wave level 1, play hyper-aggressive on that lane state, so Misfits have taken the book, thrown it out the window, like, you have now got to play around us playing through the bot lane, because we are putting so much power into it, especially if that's an Ornn mid. If everyone's able to unlock with it, get it rotating around the map, and start playing around this Xayah and Rakan that we think we're going to see.
And continuing to see Rogue go for the blind pick Renekton here, or pseudo-blind, right, in the sense that the Ornn is a flex pick. But it looks like it's going to be pure safety is the name of the game for Rogue. You said it. Misfits are saying, we're playing around bot lane. Rogue say, okay, we respect it. We'll pick Tom Kench. we know when we're on the back foot, and we're going to accept our position in the spot side of the map.
Yeah, trying to play front to back, or at least match the front to back, as we now have some pretty big, beefy boys in Ornn and Renekton. I'm, of course, always going to favor Ornn in the beefy boy category here. But I would have liked to see the Trundle. I think whenever you flash that Trundle, you get the potential to kill one of the tanks, or at least shred them down. So I think it was Rogue weighing out, okay, we see the Ornn, do we take the potential Trundle jungle or Trundle support? There's still a possibility that you could see it come out, because it doesn't have to just be played in that support position. Maybe Inspired grabs it, and you get some sort of answer to deal with Ornn in a late game.
And the thing that I wish I could see in Rogue's draft is that confidence that Renekton was a flex pick for Frostgurn, because I feel like on blue side, as many flex picks as you can get kind of balance out the red side last pick advantage. But I know it's going into the hands of Finn, but I have a lot more confidence in Misfits to flex that Ornn around to find something else that they can do with it. We now see the Jarvan banned away, and I'm trying to figure out how Rogue actually round out a composition where they have a very kind of safe playing backline and a Renekton who wants to get more aggressive, who wants to go in.
I think it's about finding a really strong jungler so that they can have the superior 2v2 top side, or at least some kill pressure there. Usually Inspired does like to bounce around between Larson and Fenn and kind of set up dives there, especially when you do have something like the Renekton. I think we've seen a lot of Renekton being played in the mid lane. Like, I know that you just talked about how we expect it to be Finn's pick, but we've already seen B-Boy pull out the Callisto, so maybe Larson decides that he's going to pull a humanoid and take the Renekton into the mid lane. But that's kind of my expectation there, is there's the Trundle ban away, so they're not going to make sure that Inspired gets it and can put kind of a target on this Ornn's back. And now it's about grabbing a safe blind pick and something that can flex to try to match whatever matchup Misfits want.
Ooh, taking their time here.
That makes a lot more sense. Forget everything that I just said. Just pick your jungler here.
Yeah, definitely true. Saving last pick for jungle, maybe not the most inspiring counter pick options up and available.
Forgot that there was an Ornn. It happens.
I mean, look.
I try to block it out.
Not necessarily the most thrilling champion to watch up, at least until he started to use his ultimate. But it looks like Inspired is happy to take Sejuani into Lee Sin. Fine matchup
it's going to be Zoe.
Ooh.
He's going to pick Azir, and then everyone's going to take Zoe, and then it's going to be boring.
Aw, Frosco, you sound so disappointed. You don't love the thrilling Azir versus Zoe matchup where Azir maybe accidentally gets tagged by a bubble, dashes away to safety, and then nothing happens? That's not what does it for you? That's not what gets you fired up?
Come on, Fibvin. Give me something good. I know you can take Zoe here, but do you want to? It's Lee Sin. You could take something spicy.
I would love sustained damage. Even better. You wanted boring, Frostgurn, and Misfits are like, we will deliver. Corki versus Zir.
I wish I had Zoe now. I take it all back.
What I will say is that I like that they have more sustained damage on the team. Zoe's a lot of burst. Obviously, you get a lot of good pick comps, but now it feels like both teams can, in theory, front-to-back team fight. But yeah, definitely not the most exciting lane phase.
I think it's also the potential now that Misfits can play out into a side lane with the Corki, which is something that Rogue's composition will be reliant on the Abyssal Voyage to match, so there's a bit more opportunity and flexibility there in terms of how Misfits want to play this one out. But otherwise, these are really stock standard compositions. I feel like we went back in time. It's Azir versus Corki. It's like your big, beefy tanks and then fighting front to back with Aphelios versus Xayah. This is not my favorite compositions, I'll say that.
Which, to be fair, if you're Rogue right now, you're like, hell yeah, we just got our bread and butter. Larson on Azir scaling to late game, that's all we did last summer. So, ready to see them bust it out again. And for Finn, I think finally has potentially a positive matchup here on the top side of the map with the Blade of the Rune King buffs, where Renekton can really bully out the Ornn, even if it's pretty hard to outvalue him in fights.
Yeah, and it's just kind of different responsibilities here for both these top laners. Dan's going to be on weak side tank utility duty, whereas there is a bit more bite for Finn here.
And really, when we look at it, if the mid lanes aren't going crazy, if they're not fighting, if they're not killing each other, it gives us a lot more room once again to focus around the bot side of the map and see if Misfits didn't really out-execute last game. They kind of just caught what Rogue were throwing at him. Maybe they can be the ones to dictate the pace more over this game. But here we go. Rogue versus Misfits, Game 2. Misfits up 1-0 in this elimination match. And here we are, straight on to the Rift, ready to see what exactly both teams have in store here in this early game for us, because I think
not going to be much.
It's going to be calm, it's going to be controlled, it's going to be collected. All right, that's perfect, actually, because it gives us kind of time to talk more about what you brought up in Champ Selects, which I think is so interesting, which is that concept of kind of like fighting to taste victory again, right? Because I think that for Rogue and Misfits, these are two hugely storied organizations. Rogue actually relatively new. Misfits hugely storied here, and they're like on the cusp of greatness, but they just can't keep it going consistently.
It's also the fact that, and we talked about this, outside of Vander and Febiven, you have a bunch of very young, inexperienced names. Some of these guys kind of getting their first shot at making a splash in playoffs. And, in a league that is so storied with some of the most iconic players in League of Legends, the Recklesses and the Perks of the world, you can only take what opportunity is given to you. And for a lot of these guys, it's their first opportunity to make a name for themselves. Kind of the theme of this series is remember the name. You will not forget B-Boy again, and he will make sure that he makes this impact. And now it's on Rogue's side. Who are you going to remember? Who will actually make the rise and show up when they need to be clutch?
It's a huge question, right? And doing it 2 games in a row on 2 different champions who can be very explosive in the game. The Kalista as well as potentially here the Xayah on the bottom side is a big deal. But you talk about veterans in this game, and I think it's important to bring up the one man who is like truly a veteran beyond veterans outside of Vander, and that is Febiven in the mid lane. He historically is just a guy that has gone through so much in his career. 11 splits, 8 playoffs, 2 titles, MSI. We all remember 2015. Maybe not all the great years of Azir versus Corki as he's now getting pushed into the tower, but this guy has been all over the place. 2014 HQK, 2015 Fnatic, 2017 H2K, Clutch. He goes over to NA. It goes terribly. He comes back, another terrible year, and for the first time it feels like we're finally seeing a return to form from Febiven, propped up by all of these rookies who are so hungry for success.
Yeah, it's the fact that 2015 Febiven sends his regards, the European golden child from kind of like the height of Europe before the rise of G2. And I was watching Misfits' Mischief series, and I think Amazing called it right. Obviously, coach behind Misfits, and he just said, Febiven's the engine. He keeps going. The drive, the motivation, he powers everything. But speaking of getting powered, Dan's getting powered off this top lane.
Okay. And here we have the...
What are we watching?
That's a good question. We're watching. Oh, they're trying to show us exactly how thrilling Corki and Azir can be. Because if you're a Corki and Azir connoisseur, look at that. Look at that. Look at that right there. You see how he cued that minion? So big brain. So big brain. Adjusted how the wave is going to put. I'm kidding. I have no idea why we watched that. It's fine. Don't worry about it. We're just going to continue on like nothing happened, and everything will be okay. I think we just had to adjust some settings, and that replay was just a smoke screen. Smoke and mirrors to distract you from whatever was going on behind the scenes, folks.
This is why they pay you the big bucks, Dracos, because you're the ultimate. The producer taps in the ears like, Dracos, I need you to distract. You're
Dracos,
like
I need you to lie through your teeth and make up some reason why this is relevant. Corki Azir, highly tactical.
Well done.
No idea. Finn, in the meantime, trying desperately to bully on the top side. Things already going much better for him. 5 CS lead up. Dan obviously going to suffer. And we're going to have to see how well Dan can play weak side of the map. He's very usually the source of attention for this Misfits lineup.
Hold on. Here comes Denik and Razork. Built-in synergy. Can they get the knock-up into the connected queue?
A lot of damage coming in from Hansama. Snare is not going to land, however. I think he was hoping to find all 3 feathers there from B-Boy. So Rogue going to continue to play quite comfortably, and Lee Sin showing on the bottom side will make it that much easier for Sejuani to make her next move. For now, it will just be Inspired recalling.
Yeah, it should be resets from both junglers, running to Crud Camp, then either look for gank or move on to Raptor Camp, look for gank again. A potential Dragon setup, although it's going to be hard for Misfits at this point because they've lost priority in mid and in bot lane. I think Razor does want to fix that. I think Misfits are probably playing around package timing, where Rogue are going to be playing around Sejuani ultimate, so this is why we expect kind of the early minutes of this game to just be ping-ponging. Just a gentleman's agreement, handshake, we're going to farm it out, it's all good.
We got one Corki TP coming in mid lane. Azir is just going to respond. You're right, it's a complete and total handshake for Oscar, and so we wait for level 6s. And unlike last game, there's not a massive advantage for one side or the other. It was Razork at level 5 to Inspired's level 3 last time around. Much more even keel. Top lane really the only place where I feel like the deficit is starting to build quite quickly, and potentially something that Misfits need to be aware of, because Dan needs to get more levels to get those Ornn upgraded items coming through, and Renekton finishing a Blade of the Rune King early is essentially a death sentence for Dan if he does not get any armor under his belt.
Look at Febivin. He went tier to try to have enough mana to compete with this wave clear, I guess, from Larson.
I mean, the on-hit damage from Muramon is good. We missed something in the scrim meta and/or on this patch, because, like, correct me, please feel free to reach out and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of tier building going on champions that auto-attack, and that, outside of Ezreal, I didn't think anyone ever wanted to build that item except for Senna when she was first released.
That's the state of this game right now, where Corki comes back, he's like, could come for the Sheen, but I'm coming for the tiers. Okay, like, so Inspired rocked up into the mid lane, helped shove so that they can attempt to dive Dan again here. Now, Dinnick is on the rotation top side, and I believe those are Rogue's safety pings, so suspecting that because they don't have vision on B-Boy and Dinnick, that Misfits are probably rotating the support up here, but otherwise they're continuing to grow this lead on Finn, who's not just putting it into the CS pocket, but also putting it into the plate pocket, and in response, that opens up the Infernal for Razork.
Ooh, but how much does it open up if Hansama can step forward? Luckily, Febivin has pushed out mid lane, will be able to step down. So essentially it's a trade. All that pressure used top side means yes. One, it looks like potentially 2 plates here for Finn. Extra 320 gold for him, but giving up for the Infernal Drake might count against them if we get late enough. For now, though, Finn very happy with that exchange.
So this is a bit removed from what we just saw, but it is something for viewers to kind of draw their attention to, and I want to really underline Razork and Dinnick in particular here. Misfits struggle a bit in kind of mid to late game macro rotation decisions, and I think it's particularly between their support and their jungle, and them being just slightly late to the right play. Now, Dinnick made the right call there. He went topside. I'll hold it. Hansama's fine. Tom Kench, fun champion. So Dinnick made the right call there, walking topside, but it's kind of like, it's those 5-second, those 10-second differences, and it's not so crucial in that moment because it allowed Razork to get the Infernal anyway, but just watch. Like, Dinnick and Razork, especially when the towers fall down, will sometimes just be at the wrong place at the wrong time, which is why close games are really devastating for Misfits, because they're not the strongest rotation-based team.
Oh, Are they going to get this recall off? Nope, it is going to be canceled. Inspired is here with level 6. B-Boy is going to get caught out, and they should just be able to shut him down. B-Boy flashing over the wall. Luckily, the blast cone is there to ferry him out to safety, but excellent play coming in from Rogue.
And that was the big timer that we talked about previously, that Rogue were going to be waiting for Inspired's cooldown, so there it goes. Now it's Misfits' turn. Ping pong again. Well, we had our go at making a play. Here's your chance. Grab the package.
Oh, but they got a flash, Frostgurn, so they're coming out on top. 600 gold lead. Woo! It's slow, all right. I
promise
steady.
this game will get exciting, but we just got to get to team fight phase, which I think Rogue fans are probably like, yes, like you said, this is exactly where we want them. Like Rogue fans, like we know how this composition works. We win with it all the time.
Scaling. What else do they need to do? They're chilling. And they're still have Inspired making plays. Rogue are kind of getting everything that they want. Well, maybe not everything that they want, but they're slowly getting little bits and pieces of things that they might enjoy, which is, you know, progress.
They're also trying to set up for this Herald. They do need to respect the package. Febiven didn't use it to wave clear. Smartly walked in, used the Gatling gun, and now is using the package and Dinnick's rotation to bully Rogue off of this. I think it was Yamato who said it, but any team that starts the Herald is immediately put at a disadvantage if both teams are there, obviously because someone's drawing aggro of giant monster. So Rogue smartly don't even smile at it. It's just like, it's fine. They rotated. We don't get it for free.
Match the rotation. Dan getting absolutely obliterated here. That's only the Cutlass, but the slow definitely makes it that much easier for Finn to chase him down. Even though they are going to start this, Misfits taking an opportunity to get something done here is a bit of a risk. I think they're trying to sneak this one away, but Inspired is on the way in.
And his cooldown is almost back up, so watching that ultimate from Sejuani, doesn't have it just yet. There is also a TP on both top laners, and Ornn's ult is down.
Ooh.
What?
Yeah, okay, Rogue going to back off on that one. Now, important to note that it is the level 6 from Dinnick and B-Boy, and they were in position more so than Hansama and Vander were, so maybe just don't want to take any risks there. But definitely feels like Rogue threw away a little bit of that gold advantage that they built for themselves early on, now that Misfits are going to guarantee at least 300 when that Herald crashes into a tower.
And you would imagine that they'd probably put it into the Corki back pocket. But I do want to kind of talk about this matchup on your screen right now. I was talking to Blippo when we had him on analyst test a couple of segments, and he did talk about how this is a matchup that you can really make bleed, but obviously at the time, all of the goodness that Ornn brings to a composition, because he is a low econ top laner still, there's always a point where it doesn't matter. Like, you can make Ornn bleed, but you cannot break him. So Finn really needs to take advantage while he can and while he can really punish before Ornn just becomes Ornn anyway.
It is somewhat inevitable. Razzle.
Oh, thanks.
I like
thanks
it.
For the leash.
What can't they take away from Inspired?
I mean, it helps obviously because Febiven doesn't get it. Thank you, observers, showing the sad Corki. So yeah, Lee Sin got the blue buff away. Larson's blue buff is now, does he still have it? Or did it fall off? I think Larson still has his blue. So I guess there's a note there, but Corki's still running tier.
Unstoppable coming out, but a huge Renekton ult. That's going to be more than enough damage. As we're trying to get the follow-up, but he's just going to get absolutely ripped through, running away. And they're going to try to dash out to safety. They're trying to finish this one off, but that's the double kill. Now Febiven is looking to be the cleanup squad here. Instead, though, he's just going to back off, and well played by Rogue. 2 quick kill pickups.
Yeah, super well played. I want to get the replay of that. I believe it was like perfect layering of the CC between Renekton and Sejuani there to make sure that it wasn't a 1-for-1 trade, that Misfits would get anything back. Very clean. As we talked about it, we wanted it. You have to get as much out of this Renekton early game as you can. It's now top lane. Nothing.
Going Dinnick.
Oh, something!
Have to play careful, forcing out the ult there. Don't want to take the Infernum damage, but Vander's looking to give him a lick. May have bit off more than he could chew, though. B-Boy needs to step forward, but he has to be careful because Hansama does so much damage. That was not the fight that B-Boy wanted, but the exhaust is there. Dinnick is trying so hard to win this exchange, but it looks like too little too late. Finn now on the way, and they're burning everything on this one. They just want to get it started off. Dinnick going to grab 1 kill. Hansama manages to make it out, but Dan, is he going to give his life for the exchange? It does not look like it. Dashes out to safety before anything else can happen. Hansama under the turret. Razork now on the way in. That's a level 10 Renekton with Blade of the Rune King. This might not be the fight that they're looking for, and it looks like indeed they will just back away.
So much expended for that top lane. Multiple teleports, a lot of flashes. It doesn't translate to any sort of objective, but I guess a point was made. So we take a look at what happened bot lane. Again, I'm trying to pay attention to how they changed the CC here. And then the ultimate comes basically as soon as he hits the ground. Really nice.
Really solid. Razor Actually, just clean play from Inspired as well. The flash there, the follow-up to make that flail connect. And Finn is tearing through this tower. 112 CS. It doesn't feel like the most crazy, most explosive game overall, right? It's 3-1, but it's already a 2K gold lead, and I think almost all of that is in the back pocket of Finn and Inspired, who the 2 kills going to Inspired and all those tower plates going to Finn. 5K to 3.5 for the Ornn. Dan is going to be done pretty quick here.
I mean, anytime you have Sejuani at what, like 13 minutes in the game who has 2 kills, you're feeling pretty good, especially when you look across at the Lee Sin. You're like, my value, what I'm going to bring to a team fight, the utility on my champion is far more significant than anything you can do. So, onus on Razor to try to like outplay this scenario, whereas it feels like Inspired gets a bit easy mode on the champion and the gold that he has stacked onto her.
So now Larson potentially in trouble. B-Boy trying to keep the play going. As I mentioned, a good flash takeout safety with Febiven now face checking into Hansam, but it's more than happy with the exchange thus far. Does he want to go for the big package? He does. He feels the big play in his bones. He manages to get it down before the stun can come through. The auto will not be interrupted, and now Razork is on the way, and he can try to swallow up Febiven, but it might not happen. Diplo try to buy a little bit of time. Febiven's in trouble. The knockup comes through. Double kill. The kick going to close it out, and Febiven going to be happy with that one.
Remember Hansama, who you used to play for? You left Misfits. You decided you wanted to win? Well, Febiven sends his regards.
Just solid play. On top of that, he's still got the Muramana. He's stacking. He just picked up the Sheen. That's a perfect time to get a few more kills. Makes it that much faster to get to the Trinity Force.
I want to see what happens here. Like you said, Febiven just knows he's got the Sheen. Face checks in. He's like, watch how much damage I'm about to do to this kid.
That was a lot of damage.
What's great here is like Razor actually walked back towards the mid lane to hit with the Herald, so I don't know if that's like a miscommunication there, instead of following his mid laner. Like, Razor's already walking back towards Herald as Febiven is Valkyring across to kill Hansama.
I would not be surprised if they're min-maxing and he just walked back to get the plate gold. He's like, hold on one sec, I gotta get 300 gold. All right, I'm back, I'm helping, I swear I never left. And look, it's 15 minutes in, and as good as Febiven is, this is by far the strongest game we've seen from Finn in a long time, and it feels like those are the 2 actors in this play. Everyone else, they're side characters. They're B-roll at best, but Finn is up 51 CS and 2.7k gold in terms of his individual matchup. That is astonishing. He's going to get Black Cleaver right after Dan finishes his Sunfire Cape.
He's got to have some potential to continue to beat out onto a side lane, but the issue is that Corki is also now getting pretty fed. So there is an answer that Misfits have to also play out into a side lane, which then Vander's Abyssal Voyage becomes, again, that much more important. So it is something to keep our eye on as the lane assignments break down, the more we start dropping these towers and opening the map up.
And I like to see that B-Boy's already taking a few camps away, something we often see from Xayah, is kind of funneling resources into that champion so she can get off the ground a little bit faster. But it seems like we've approached the team fight stage of the game. Everyone is grouped up and looking for a fight. Here comes the Ornn Horn. Dan going to try to find the engage. Interrupted a little bit by Vander, but he's taking a lot of poke back in response. Febiven maybe forced to Valk out to safety, and it's Inspired. Finn still on the side. Hansama doesn't have the Gravitum ult, so he won't be able to keep the fight going, but he does lay down a bit more poke.
That's a lot of big ultimates, however, used, as Rogue managed to hold on to theirs, so they just kind of let Misfits throw their face at them into the mid lane. It doesn't translate into any sort of pressure advantage or tower. They're trying to like double down onto it now, but with blue Aphelios, it's going to be really hard to break through here.
Yep, just instantly shreds through the wave. And Trinity Force getting closer and closer for Febiven, so obviously a ton of mana there to make the Muramana work. Presence of Mind combining there as well means that you should have a lot of just flat AD at this point in the game on top of the extra Sheen burst. So while Larson may have better sustained damage, it will be hard to match Corki's burst in the fights to come.
This is a bit dangerous though, so it's not desperation, but you can feel that Misfits are very hungry to kind of start the fight here, whereas Rogue are definitely playing much more calm and collected from the back foot. They just kind of absorbed the pressure that Misfits threw at them in the mid lane. They now sent Larson bot side. He's not even using his TP. He back to base. He's now walking towards the Herald. So kind of in the last 2 to 3 minutes, Rogue just kind of like wore Misfits out. They like watched them run around in circles like, are you done yet? Are you calm? Okay. And then they just took what they came here for.
And this is the kind of tenacity that you do want to see in a best-of-5 for Oscar. Because I was definitely wondering, as we came after Game 1, when Rogue were trying so hard to force every single play in Game 1, if things would change for Game 2. And it does seem like they've calmed down. They've got a draft they're very comfortable with. They know how to play this one out. They're not taking any risks, and they just look infinitely more comfortable as a result.
And now they just need to pick their moment about when they want to turn on. And you talked about the scaling, how we know that big team fights will be coming. Rogue are fine to give away these Drakes. The towers are more important to them at this point, so securing the Rift Herald was much more valuable, because this game will be more about kind of the 20-25 minute mark rather than the 15.
Always something that I love to hear. Of course, good news for Misfits is that B-Boy has the extra BF sword here. Not sure how much gold Hansama has in his back pocket, so hopefully looking to even that out, but itemization differences could be pretty massive. Yeah, he has enough there. So he'll be able to pick up and match on top of the boots and the extra dagger that he has. The extra 2 daggers, rather, not the boots. So things not terrible for Misfits. It's not an unrecoverable gold lead, but when I look at these two compositions, I've seen Rogue execute this composition a ton. I know they can play this composition when we get to mid to late game. For Misfits, I don't think like we've seen that same team fighting spark when they don't have a very big lead generated in the early game.
Misfits have some pretty chaotic team fights. Now, the thing is while Misfits definitely don't have the same like coordination and like cleanliness that Rogue do in their team fights, it's Febvin, he's okay, he'll walk it off. They definitely have that X factor because they have guys like Razork and Febvin who can just win you team fights because they outplay multiple scenarios. And that's not to say that Rogue don't have that in guys like Larson, but I would just say that's kind of the edge that Misfits do bring to team fights, whereas Rogue kind of bring that more Mighty Ducks, like flying V, collective teamwork.
It's the power of friendship. Yeah, and I think the thing to note for Misfits too is that they're fortunate enough to have the Rakan in their composition, right, which can always change a team fight. We've seen so many miraculous Rakan ults from Hylissang, from Mickey, from Kaiser as well now, adding his name to that list, to turn games around. And while Tahm Kench is very good, very stable, very reliable, allows you to move between lanes, doesn't have quite the same high highs. So maybe Dennett can be kind of the big difference maker in the fights to come.
Especially if he gets out to one of these side lanes, as we've basically just been trading lane farm now for kind of the last 2 to 3 minutes, and it's going to be a question about who gets the numbered advantage to one side of the map, maybe catches someone out, if that's Larson or if that's Dan. As you can see, both teams have sent their jungle support combos sniffing around.
Yeah, just both teams kind of fishing, just laying out the line, seeing who's going to bite, seeing who's going to overextend, seeing who's going to overcommit. But for now, both teams just kind of dancing back and forth, as you mentioned. The good news is Rogue's strongest point on the map, Finn, remains dominant in this matchup and means he can provide a little bit more pressure for the team. Good news for Misfits, though, is if they start a fight without Finn there, they're basically dead even in gold, because Finn is where 90% of that Rogue advantage is.
It's still just really hard to try to crack or start a fight on Rogue, however, because outside of Dan, there's not a lot of hard CC other than the Rakan, but you have so many disengage tools. I'll hold it. Maybe they catch Larson.
Connects the flash forward just to follow it up. The instant shutdown. Well played by Razor. Did not want to give Larson any opportunity to make his way out of that one, and he gets Finn's TP as well.
And it's Misfits who make it out into the side lane first, as Fevin turns around like, you don't actually want this. You think you're big because you've been punching down on Ornn? Guess what? You're not going to punch down on Corki.
Inspired, though. They don't want to do anything alone, but they are willing to do it as a team. This ulti connects onto Febvin. No auto attacks will hit, though, so the stun follow-up can't be there for Inspired, and both sides just going to back away. They're just squaring up Frostgrowing. They're ready to fight, but they're just talking trash right now to each other.
It's because both teams have options that they don't mind trading farm because there are scaling potential there. I do think, though, that side lane play is eventually going to be a breakpoint for Misfits, just because I think Febvin's just gonna outscale and outlast. Like, yeah, Finn's been having a good time with Dan, but now he's been pulled away from him. There's still a massive CS difference, but eventually Ornn will just start to do Ornn things, and Febvin can hold down the fort with his teleport, with his mobility on Corki until he's ready to be there. So Misfits can match Rogue in the 5v5 in terms of team composition, and they can match Rogue in terms of Finn's advantage on a side lane because of how strong Corki is.
Yeah, and as Finn starts to fall off, you're obviously always going to be a great duelist, but as he starts to fall off in team fights, those Ornn items are going to amount to more and more, and we're getting closer and closer to the breakpoint for Dan. We'll hold that thought, though, because Denix is going to go for the flash engage. The follow-up onto Tahm Kench is there. Hansama going to get spit out to safety. The exhaust will make sure he doesn't go down. Now Hansama wants to turn it because it's inspired on the back side. Here he goes in for the ult. He will connect onto Febvin, and that should just be his life, but no, Febvin flashing out within an inch of his life. The safeguard will keep him healthy, and now the fight's going to turn B-Boy! That was massive. Larson there to punish, however, is Denix now just going to try to make what he can out of a potentially lost fight. Dan needs to make it out. Misfits doing well to kick things off. It looks hype, it looks flashy, but Rogue just going to slowly but surely walk them down as Dan is going to walk away here empty-handed.
And it feels like what Rogue will actually get out of this, other than the kill gold, is they'll be able to match the mid lane tower and get in position for the Ocean Drake that's spawning in 15 seconds. So it's kind of, in terms of objectives, a wash back and forth, but definitely some hero moments from key players. So to start this one out, it feels like Rogue really just want to play like the wave game. They send Larson down bottom, Finn is down top side, and they're like, it's fine, we have Hansama on Aphelios and Kench to hold mid lane, but like Misfits just throw everything in the kitchen sink to look for the dive, and they forced Rogue to react. Now, in the reaction, outside of this crazy play by B-Boy with the flash to hit the feathers there, they do end up cleaning up the fight, but you can kind of see the stylistic difference between these teams. The fact that Misfits are like, no, you will fight us, and it's a question of if Rogue survive it or not.
And credit to B-Boy, but now the fight's just going to start again because Razork is just going to get deleted here. Lock down the kick out to safety. Is alive for now. Featherman is going to use the package that unstoppable, keeping him alive and well. B-Boy, though, no ultimate, has to be careful. Is going to back up on this one. He's taking so much damage without that ult. He instantly gets shredded through, and there's Finn. All that gold paying off. Hansama, rain in hell from the back line. Dan and Featherman got nothing left but to run. Finn fishing for the double dash, wants to make his way in for more, but massive fight in favor of Rogue.
And this is some of those macro rotational errors that we were talking about that Misfits struggle with. That was never their dragon to try to fight for. You didn't have flash, you didn't have ultimate on Xayah. You shouldn't have approached it when you already gave Rogue on a composition that excels so much when they get to set up first access to the Drake. Now losing that team fight, and if they lose the Baron here, that's the moment where Misfits threw it all away.
The thing is, Aphelios has not the ideal guns for the shred, so it does buy them a bit more time, but here comes the taunt bench. Oh no, this is going to go from bad to worse. If they take the Baron and then find 2 kills on top of it, Finn is very big. Can he make his way out to safety in this one? 1.2k getting lower and lower. They are going to grab the Baron. Now they can turn to look for Featherman, but Featherman, one-man army. Maybe he can get something done here, but he has to be careful, has to pay respect. Hansama has the CC necessary to lock him down. Misfits walking away, and Rogue secure the Baron, not uncontested, but unharmed.
Yeah, the smarter team in the moment wins here. And again, Rogue had first access here. Razor maybe feeling flashy. They had the TP from Featherman behind the tower. They think, okay, we can catch them off guard. We can look for the pincer. But doesn't pay off as Denik and B-Boy face check right into Inspired still in the pit. And then B-Boy just gets shredded.
That bush got double face checked by Misfits in the fight. Both times it cost them so much. They cannot afford to make mistakes like that in the fights to come because it's clear Rogue, they're very comfortable. They know exactly how they win those exchanges. They didn't hesitate to continue on the Baron. They weren't scared of Featherman either, and now it's earned them a 6k gold lead. They've tied up the Drakes, and they were already winning pretty handily, but now every lane is starting to pull ahead.
And this will be my expectation over the course of the series, that when games are really close, just like neck and neck, I edge Rogue as the better team because they make more consistent and better macro rotation-based calls. They will more likely than not be in the right place at the right time. Whereas if it's a snowball, Misfits are probably going to be the people who win that game because they're the aggressive team. They're the ones that force you to go off script and try to make the crazy plays, and then have the miracle players like the Feathermans, like the Razorks, that can take a lead and know how to run away with it.
And things are just going to get harder from here on out. Inspired will recall safely. Larson is a similar story, but I talk kind of about how Rakan, the theoretical world of a team fight, can't outvalue a Tom Kench. When he can't outvalue a Tom Kench is the 1-3-1 that Rogue can set up if they want to. They can split up 4-1, 1-3-1, however they want. With this Baron buff backing them up, they can really do anything.
And that's kind of the nice thing, though, for both teams, is that the Baron going either side wouldn't be like the game ender, though, although I do feel that this still puts a massive advantage into Rogue's back pocket, and if Misfits kind of go back after this game, it's going to be that Drake fight that they go back to the table on, but because of the nature of these compositions, they still get a couple more chances to try to claw this one back, but Rogue pretty firmly in control. Dinnick, watch him.
On flank. Something that they're wishing for, but he will get spotted out now. They have most of their flanks warded on the side of Rogue, as well as this Azir tower set up, and it's very hard to collapse on this team at this point in time. Meanwhile, Finn does break down the bottom tier 2. Featherman the only person who can contest him, only person with enough of a damage threat and survivability to really stop the Renekton pushing any further. And now Inspired just stepping forward. The turret's laid down from Hansama. He's got Infernum. He's got the Chakram. He can do a lot of damage if they try to walk into him. It's very difficult to walk into an Aphelios when he has those weapons out.
So the question is kind of when will Misfits take their moment? Will they wait until Aphelios runs out of ammo, swaps weapons, and then charge? Because they're trying to weigh up, like, if we lose the fight here, that's pretty much it. Like, the waves are big enough that the game ends. Or do we take the moment, think that Rogue have overextended or someone is slightly out of position, and then pull the Ornn Horn and try to start the fight? Or find Dinnick on some sort of flank?
This is so obnoxious. that just did like 700 damage with 2 little plink plink autos from those turrets. My god. Aphelios, while nerfed repeatedly, still remains frustrating. 3 items, it turns out, on any AD carry makes them annoying, and Aphelios is no exception there, as Hansama is feeling quite comfortable. Good news is, Dan approaching level 14. He can upgrade either B-Voy or Febivin, depending on where they've slotted their items. Ideally, the Molten Edge for both in the levels to come.
You don't think it's going to be the Black Cleaver upgrade for Razork?
Look, I've seen a lot of healthy misclicks in pro play. You know what I mean? I've seen people put items in the wrong slot and end up with the Trinity Fusion. Maybe he wants to do that. I don't know. It seems like the wrong choice, but I trust that Misfits have done the math.
In terms of core itemization coming through, you know, have the Randuin's Omen up for Sejuani. Basically, like, everyone's going to start being the meaty tanks, and because the dragons are split 2 for 2 each side, we can't even get into this exciting moment where it's like a must fight for a soul, although Misfits will probably fight for it even though they don't need to.
And that's what I like to see. Go for it. They got the package as well. Last time Febivin had to use it to escape, so maybe if they can kick things off in their favor, they can use it more aggressively, get some of that damage down. But Rogue's front line strong enough to Tahm Kench as well as the Sejuani here to just continue to poke, continue to stop any kind of engages. We are full on
We're
A-ramming.
North America now.
We got him there. We have agreed to fight. You and all your friends in the mid lane at 29 minutes. We're squaring up.
You don't need it. Neither team really needs this. You can play a side lane. It's not a soul point. Oh, we will die for this one.
That does not matter. This is the arena.
Misfits are at a disadvantage, though, because if they die here, look at the bot wave. It would be game over.
Oh, but they managed to find him in the pinch. Dan, that's going to be a big ult. They only managed to hit Tahm Kench. B-Boy off to the side. Good damage so far. Dan soaking as much as he can, but it's Finn on the back line. It's going to be a problem for this team. But Finn dashing out to safety. B-Boy's still there. B-Boy can go in, but the exhaust comes in. It's clutch from Vander. The ultimate already forced out. It's a slow, controlled team fight. Rogue had the health bars in their favor. Misfits going to walk away with the Dragon.
So they pull the Drake, but they immediately have to fall back into their base as the Baron is spawning. They need to clear out these waves, get them off their towers. That then gives Rogue, like, okay, yeah, you can have the Drake. Again, it's not soul point. We're going to get first rotation, first access to set up for this Baron.
Denik, though, still trying to threaten. Misfits still feeling confident in their ability to step forward. And you're right, though, 23 seconds on this Baron. Rogue are going to take the opportunity to recall.
Need to get the control wards.
Makes sense. And now Finn doing Finn things. Going bot lane to push. He does have TP, of course. Can make his way back to the pit at any moment. I thought he was like going on another journey to steal a buff like we saw in last game. You never know with Finn.
He wants to catch whoever's going to walk up to that wave. And I think Dan's kind of suspicious. Like, they're kind of doing the same thing. They're feeling each other out like, someone's there. I know someone's there.
He's like,
that's
I have
level
TP.
17 to level 14.
You have TP. We both need to go to the Baron eventually. He sniffs it out. Now,
look at Dan's level. Look at Finn's level.
Look at Dan's position. This man might as well be in his fountain. He's so afraid of dealing with this Renekton right now. He's waiting for his team to back off so he can contest a wave. He might be great in a team fight, but man, this is not a 1v1 he ever wants. He doesn't even want to trade a little bit.
I know Misfits are like a Florida-based org, but that is not the Gator that they want to party with.
Definitely not. Finn, though, stepping up to just the team, moving into mid lane. Razork once again fishing for the flank. They're going to spot the ward coming over the wall. They're going to know approximately where he is. They know Denik is out in the open, so they know exactly who's trying to flank him. Dan, hungry for XP. Please, sir, may I have another level? I'd like to upgrade my teammates. He gets one wave.
It's so hard, though, because poor little Ornn wants to be there for the 5v5. Like, he's so important for these team fights that he can't just, like, peace out to a side lane to get some EXP. Get some peanuts.
I think there's degrees of wrong. There's no 100% correct choice. You want everything.
So Sejuani ult. I'm just waiting for it to come across this corner.
Who's going to find the flank first? Denik is very far back. Obviously can use any of his teammates as a highway to make his way into the back line. But have to be very careful. Vander might as well be glued to Hansama at this point.
Hero ward. Shout out to little blue orb right there, sitting in the bush, catching this Gator, looking for the very deep reach around.
No comment on that one. Slowly, Renekton, though, continues to bully in on the bottom side. And it feels like, once again, we've had these points, multiple points in the game, right, Frosker? And I felt like Rogue pulled very healthily in the lead, but now it feels like, once again, we've reset to the point where they see 3 items on the enemy team, they know that a wrong team fight can cost them so much, and the entire game is slowed down. It's become about trading waves. I say that. Caster Curse. Immediately, it's about the Baron instead. Rogue are starting it up, and there's a TP on the way in.
It's getting shred very quickly.
5k, lower and lower. Inspired going forward. Excellent ult from B-Boy. Good reaction speed. Baron still poking down. Has it reset though. Denik trying to find the engage, but there's no follow-up damage. They're not in position, but here comes the Ornhorn. Everyone's lined up, but they only managed to hit one. It's Larson. Finn on the backside. Misfits now have to pull back. They can get collapsed on here, and it would be disastrous. Finn, Blade of the Rune King move speed, taking him forward. My god, it's neck and neck in these fights.
Razork still has his ultimate, so there's still some protection from Finn. It's why Finn can't immediately just go in. Lee Sin would just kick him away.
Ooh, big snare there from Hansama, but once again, no follow-up. Inspired is back. Can make his way into this fight. Has used his Randuin's Omen active and his Flash as well, so some of his tools are not available.
Larson's all teleported in, so Rogue got him right where they want him. Health bar advantage.
Dan Unstoppable is just going to back away here. Cannot use that CC, but now Hansama has been caught out. He's going to be in trouble. They're trying to buy the time. Razor trying to find the kick flash. Instead, he's going to kick the Sidorni in the midst of the team. Hansama now going to be in trouble, but Denik cannot find the knockup. A beautiful flash from Hansama. They're fighting enemy territory, but it doesn't matter. Rogue have met a strong back line, and they're pushing Misfits back into their own side of the map. They're all so low. There's so much damage threat here on the Misfits side. If Rogue misposition, they can get shredded, but this is definitely Rogue's fight to lose. Snare there.
They've corralled them.
Oh, they've just gone into the meat grinder. Rogue have set it up so beautifully. Unstoppable now. It's Larson's time to shine. Hansama on the backside with the onslaught. Just let him die. Triple kill coming in for the Azir. Rogue, that was a thing of beauty.
And they don't even need the Baron. Rogue knows the damage is done. It was a controlled, slower pace game. That's exactly what Rogue want to see on a composition that is their bread and butter. They just tear Misfits apart and bring us to a 1-1 series.
Incredible fight. Shepherding them back. I didn't know who was going to come out on top, but Rogue, stay steady, stay controlled. This is what you talked about when it comes to scaling, when it comes to a close game. Execution from Rogue is on point. They're walking around. It's a victory lap as they tie up the series. 1-1 the overall score. What a change here in Game 2.
But something that is very important to watch for is that anytime those fights were set up, if you went and you looked at the minimap, Rogue were always at the advantage. So any win for Rogue would mean so much more because they'd win the team fight and they could immediately rotate off onto a prepped wave and then take an objective off the back of it. Take a tower, take an inhib. Whereas when Misfits were fighting, they were constantly fighting with their minion waves against them. So they'd win the fight and then immediately have to reset. They could never get tempo off the back of team fight wins.
And on top of that, Frosker, when we look at it too, you look at all of those fights, you look at all the ults coming in from Dan in a miserable lane, but team fight utility, that was going to be the game changer. And then when you look at the fights, he only ever hit 1, maybe 2 people max with those Ornn ultimates because Rogue were so good at slowing down and splitting up the second they saw that cooldown come out. Finn immediately on the backside, and it was actually just very, very clean team fight coordination coming in from Rogue. It's something I love to watch.
Yeah, they play team fights really slow. They're one of our better team fighting teams, whereas again, Misfits in team fighting, not their strongest suit. Misfits in skirmishing, that's where they like to thrive. They've got the miracle players, they've got the X Factors, the 3v3s, the 2v2s. That's what you want to see if you're a Misfits fan.
Absolutely is. We'll have to check it out in Game 3. But coming up next, the analysts tell you all about Rogue's wins, so don't go anywhere.
Charged up. Hello, everybody. Let the game begin.
Touch me now. I throw my hands, you make me wanna shout out loud. I say a little prayer for it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my, oh my. I say a little prayer. Touch me now. I throw my hands, you make me wanna shout out loud. I say a little prayer for it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my, oh my. I say a little prayer for your love, baby, don't, 'cause I love it. I say a little prayer for your love, baby, don't, 'cause I love it. I say a little prayer. Prayer for it. Touch me now. I throw my hands, you make me wanna shout out loud. I say a little prayer for it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my, oh my. I say a little prayer. Touch me now. I throw my hands, you make me wanna shout out loud. I say a little prayer for it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my, oh my. I say a little prayer for your love, baby, don't, 'cause I love it. I say a little prayer for your love, baby, don't, 'cause I love it. I say a little prayer. Little prayer for it. Little prayer for it. Little prayer for it.
Welcome back, everyone, to the expert panel. Rogue has evened out the series. It is now 1-1, so they came back in that second game, and we're going to go all over that. I do want to start with picks and bans and a topic that we've seen come up in these two games, actually. Ender, you want to talk about the Manamune and kind of what we're missing in why it's coming up.
Yeah. So this is, of course, going to be the Manamune into Mirror Mana upgrade on the Corki. We also saw Hansama build it on the Draven in the last game, and honestly, this looks very surprising to a lot of people because we haven't seen any like super recent changes that have made this pop up to popularity. But the change to Presence of Mind in the off season that increases your maximum mana by up to 500 means that you can pair this item with the Mirror Mana, with Presence of Mind, with Trinity Force that also gives you mana, and you get insane numbers. This Corki at 30 minutes of the game had 89 AD coming from the Mirror Mana, which is more than any other item in the game. For context, Infinity Edge is going to give you 80 total attack damage, and also he was doing 80 damage on hit from the passive from the item as well. So it can be very, very powerful on some of these scaling champions, and keep in mind, it's only going to get amped even further on the crits from Infinity Edge damage as well.
I think speaking about scaling, Manamune on Corki is wonderful. Always in compositions like these two that we saw today, is that you compare the scaling, right? Both compositions are heavily on the scaling. You have the Ornn, but you have to look at the key pieces, which is, of course, the itemization. If you look at Misfits composition, it forces you to think about Mercury right off the bat. You need to think of the tenacity. You have a good mixture of damage While on the other side, while the scaling is good with the Ornn and the Corki, Lee Sin into tanks, into Azir, into Tahm Kench, you're going to be having a really hard time in order to impact that. And on top of that, when we think of the itemization, Ninja Tabi, really insane against Corki and the Xayah. Randuin Zoman, very insane against the Xayah and the Corki. Itemization is much easier for Rogue's side, and that is something that is always going to matter in those late game teamfights that we saw.
Yeah, and it's nice that you highlight that it's never just about one thing, right? And that's why we often highlight preparation as well. It's about thinking about that draft versus the opponent, the specific itemization, depending on the draft and the state of the game, but also execution. And I think in the first game, we saw misexecution from Rogue and great execution and follow-up from Misfits. This time around, in the early game, Rogue had a much better time.
I think we saw in this game, the options and the key fix from last game. We see this 2v2 on bottom side. We talked about options. The Renekton is strong when you have a different side of the map that is scaling. Rogue were playing to it, and Misfits went into these old habits of playing through Dandam, playing through topside when they really shouldn't. Forcing 2v2 against Sejuani Renekton when you're leasing an Ornn is honestly just suicide. So we saw good habits from Rogue, bad habits from Misfits showing up there, and it's very important to highlight that Rogue had things to play through, and I felt like Misfit really didn't have that in the early game, and that gives more options for Rogue to kind of create that lead onto that Renekton.
Right, and these were two drafts that felt like they were going to scale very well, like both sides sort of towards the mid to late game into those 5 versus 5s. But as soon as Renekton, in an already very good matchup, is going to get a couple of kills thrown his way, all of a sudden you saw the CS lead balloon out of control. He's, having free reign over side lanes. And I like to think that because of the teleport buffs as well, that give you that super home guard coming off of the TPs, that Renekton's team fighting actually got like slightly buffed a couple of patches ago with that changes. It's because Renekton's problem is that he's going to get kited out when he's trying to go into team fights. It's not his damage. His damage is always going to be good, but if his target access is going to be higher with those TP plays, well, you saw in some of those fights, like the backline just could not run away from this man.
That's an epic observation, I think, Ender, because we always say, well, you got to be far ahead because Ornn is always going to have such a big team fight presence. But with that kind of extra help from that TP change, we saw that Renekton could take over the game. Now, you say he can get into fights easily. It helps if the enemy AD carry positions awkwardly as well. Let's take a look at this Drake fight because we were singing B-Voi's praises, and he did a bit of an upset, I think, in this game as well, which helped Rogue even more.
Yeah, so this fight was really uncomfortable for Misfits right off the bat because you can sort of see like they're trying to group up and go for the fight, but as soon as the counter engage comes in from Rogue, like, B-Voi's just in the front. Where's the rest of his team? They were all stuck over inside of their jungle trying to get around that wall. He was just way too far forward, and as soon as he gets blown up, like the team fight's just gone.
Like, that was super awkward for many reasons because like they started off the Drake and then they got split up, and when you're not in the same position you kind of need to regather yourself, and they kept forcing the dragon, and I think they just forgot that Ocean Drake bush existed because the whole Rogue lineup came out of it and B-Boy was just standing there ready to give him a big old hug.
And as in many cases, like also yesterday with the upside out of position, it's also kind of a consequence of the game state and of the entire team state, right? It's never that one person. I mean, sometimes it is that one person being out of position, but you saw that Misfits was caught between a rock and a hard place and a lot of bushes, of which Rogue could take advantage. But I do have to commend Rogue for, just like Misfits in game 1, when they had the upper hand, they were able to push through and they didn't waver basically in their pushing through, which is commendable for a team in playoffs.
Absolutely, this team was able to, go for the fight, set them up, especially that final fight where they were able to collapse around from behind and, sort of pincer off Misfits after they'd already caught them out of position. It just goes to show that this team is good at the team fights. We were sort of singing their praises before the games. We're like, they can do a little bit of everything, but I think almost their bread and butter does come down to these later game situations where they can attack in the 5v5 quite well. And I think that you were sort of talking a little bit about the bot lane B-Void getting caught out, comparing to Upset earlier as well. I think that's a little bit of a consequence of the role, quite frankly. You're a super high DPS champion that's very susceptible to getting caught out. So in these high pressure moments, especially in playoffs, your positioning has to be perfect, otherwise you get punished, and that's sort of what happened a couple times throughout this game.
We just saw two different looks from the teams. One game where Misfits ran away from the game after a successful early game. The second where things were taken a bit slower, and it seems like that is more of Rogue's comfort zone. What is Misfits' optimal strategy now to come back? Is it to put the pedal to the metal and try and accelerate the game state from earlier on and push it into Misfits' comfort zone, or what would you recommend?
I feel like I'm just going to reiterate the same point as before. I think Rogue had a very well-rounded composition that was exactly in their wheelhouse. In their victories in the regular season against Misfits, it was these games that were very dragged out. They had the Ezreal Yumi win when they just outscaled the enemy, when the enemy composition was kind of wonky and all over the place. I think Misfits need to go back to the roots. Playing through bottom is still a big question mark. I think they can gain advantages by attacking Finn, and then through that advantage being the team that wins the split push, because I think that's where Misfits usually get their advantages. This is not it. They are trying to play Rogue's game. Rogue is just better at their own game, naturally.
Yeah, I also think, controlling around mid lane, you know the sort of strategy that Rogue is going to be going for. I like to see Febvin on something that is maybe a little bit more powerful early on for making moves with the rest of his team too. You win through mid lane first and then spread it out towards top, towards bot. That's my plan.
All right, let's see. After the break, we will get some insight from Rogue's performance coach as they look to keep this momentum going into Game 3.
Taking the time to join me today.
Thank you so much to you.
Well, during the last 2 weeks of the regular season, we saw a lot less convincing version of Rogue, if I may say. How did you address this and work with the team to come and be ready in the final form today?
Yeah, definitely the last 2 weeks of the regular season weren't as fortunate as we want them to be. We were very, very well prepared for the week that LEC was cancelled.
Yeah.
So, that was very, very unfortunate. So we were super prepared for G2 and Fnatic. And of course, from there, everything started just in the direction of uncertainty, right? So we lost the last 4 games. So we had to address it in the way of being aware of what is happening. Of course, with all the issues right now that we are facing with quarantine and playing online. Yeah. So we had to think where is our focus? So from the kind of mindset or the mental side, we bring a little more kind of approaches of mindfulness, so being aware of what's happening, how to focus on those things, what are the most important things at the moment, now trying to adapt to kind of the newest stage, which is our offices, which is completely different than playing on the studio.
Yeah, so, that makes sense.
Yeah. So definitely maintaining routines, but at the same time trying to adapt and being flexible and accepting what is happening, really.
And it's one thing that many teams have been talking about, the fact that you have to channel the stage energy at the gaming house. So it was something you had to work on. So tell me about working on this and how did you manage to make the team better in this setup?
Well, we try different approaches, looking into how to play online, because playing face-to-face is completely different, especially for players who the stress that kind of comes into playing on a stage is more useful. So it is kind of, like you say, channeling this stress. So of course they needed to learn, and we needed to learn how to channel this stress and how to put it in a screen setting, basically. So we tried to integrate or kind of maintain some of these routines that we've been having all year long, but now trying to accept okay, we have to play where we usually play every single day, and then from there trying to build that trust and building that kind of synergy again from a situation that, well, we have to try our best in the last couple of weeks. So yes, it hasn't been easy, but at the same time everyone is giving their best to put themselves into kind of the perspective we have to play online, which is not the best approach.
I agree. We all have to make the best out of a difficult situation, if I may say. But there's also another element when it comes to the formats and the fact that Rogue is playing on the lower parts of the bracket, so there's no safety net, the same way Fnatic or G2 could have one, in a way. Is it something the players know about, and is it something you were working on coming into this series today, the fact that they have to perform at their best because there won't be any second chance here?
Yeah, the approach never changed in terms of the mindset, what they want to kind of show during the games. Of course, we knew they were very aware that we're playing in these lower brackets, so they are very aware of it, and they've been trying their best in every single game, but adjusting to this new setup, it's a little bit, it takes a little bit of time, but then at the same time, I think it is not any excuse or anything like that, but it's something that you need to be aware of. So we maintain the routines. We try to even work a little bit, not a little bit, work even harder. So they are very committed to try to give their best.
And they already did, bouncing back from game one. And it leads me to my last question, focusing on this series now, because the first game was pretty one-sided in favor of Misfits, and we know how important it is to reset your mindset in these situations. So tell me about approaching this series when it comes to be mentally prepared to bounce back from a severe loss, just like they did right now.
Yeah, I think the best of 5 is all about adaptation and flexibility. So what happened during the after the second game was just to try to recognize what are the patterns of the opponent team of Misfits, and then from there trying to see from the mindset point of view, looking into kind of listening to the comms and trying to look after the game how they're feeling, how they are behaving, because there is lots of stress, but they don't realize how they're behaving. So from my side, from my my second side, from my second kind of point of view, it is easier to try to understand how they're feeling. So from there, like kind of we just implement another of the routines that kind of prepare them and get them into the right mindset to, okay, now this is the third game and then we need to perform.
And it looks like they bounced back already. Ismail, thank you very much for your answers and insights about this Rogue team. And I'm going to give it back to the casters for Game 3.
Thank you.
Always interesting to hear about the work behind the scenes for Rogue, especially in this very unique point in time. We're already into the thick of picking bands. I'm still Dracos. I'm still joined by Frosker, and it's Syndra and Senna taken away. But as you heard, routines, routines, routines. The name of the game for Rogue.
I actually didn't get to hear that what he said.
Yeah, he said he's like, we got a routine for this, and she's like, how does this affect you? He's like, we got a different routine for that. He's like, how does this one affect you? A third routine for that specific thing. So,
I'm not surprised that Rogue have like plan A, plan B, plan D. Like it just keeps going.
And that's just for the mental portion. That's not even for the in-game. So there's got to be like at least triple the amount of plans. We'll see, I guess, what the plans, what the adaptations are going to look like, because Rogue are back on the red side. The Callista is going to get taken away. They don't want to give that first pick up to Evoy, and the Yuumi ban has reared its head once again on the side of Misfits.
So we are straying a bit from the ban, still holding true to the fact that Misfits are banning Syndra from both sides. Curious kind of, the respect to Finn, banning away the Renekton. Don't want to see that again. I believe his stats last game were ridiculous on the champion.
Absolutely were. I'm not going to tell you that we had a graphic prep. We definitely did. It was very gross. He received almost no jungle attention compared to his opponent and was up just so much gold, so much CS. It was absolutely disgusting, but it looks like Misfits are taking a page from the Rogue book. A lot of 80 carries banned and taken away, and that means the Aphelios will go into the hands of Bvoy, one of his most successful picks.
Yeah, Aphelios continues to be kind of the high priority first pick as soon as Senna and Callista and Syndra are removed, so teams consistently reaching for this champion, so it should be pretty obvious to Rogue here. So what do they want to take into the champion? Grabbing the set, still a flex pick, even if we don't have necessary tape of it. And Hansama's going to roll the dice again.
He's so determined to make this work. I remember splits where we had to wait like weeks on end, you know, half a split before we got to see the Hansama Draven. But he's just pulling it out every single time he gets the opportunity. Makes sense. Aphelios has been hit in the laning phase pretty hard over the last couple patches. But they are just going to grab himself the Aphelios Tom Kench, trying to get that safety on the bottom side.
Yeah, immediately respecting the fact that you're against a Draven. Now you're either going to pick up a jungle pick or you're going to have a very safe blind flex pick. If you assume that that's a set top, you could try to go for the Aatrox. I know that Dan and Finn are really comfortable in either side of this matchup.
Ooh. Question is, do you flex the set around? Something else we're going to have to keep our eye on. But last time we saw this matchup, I do believe that Dan pulled very far ahead. But that Kled might indicate a different story. It might just be that support set.
And this would be a trap then laid for Rogue. You show the set. It's actually a support set. It has flexibility. You lure them into a false sense of security to pick up the Aatrox. Everyone has played either side of this matchup, and then boom, Finn pulls it out. The one-trick Kled that has Grievous Wounds built into his kit that has a really good matchup into Aatrox.
Huge engage tool. Dashes right in. Tom Kench swallows the Aphelios. He thinks everything's fine. And then suddenly, the support set out of nowhere grabs that fat catfish and just dunks him right back into his own team. That's the dream scenario for Rogue I keep seeing in my head, Frostgurren.
Yeah, so we'll keep our eyes. If it is going to be Vander's set, it could still technically go to Larson. Hell, for all we know, Larson could pull a Doinby and decide to take the Kled into the mid lane.
I hate when pick bans are like that. I love players like Doinby. I love G2 from last year. But it makes it impossible to know literally anything until the 20 seconds are left in pick ban. Good thing is, bans are coming out. LeBlanc, Gragas, at least limiting some of what we'll see here.
Yeah, again, taking away really strong blind picks like the LeBlanc. We'll see if they actually pinch the Azir. It feels like both teams feel confident letting the Azir go through because both Larson and Fevin can reach for the Zoe, can reach for the Corki to answer into a long-range champion. And then also focusing on the jungle pool. Ooh. Makes the Azir even easier for Larson here to grab.
Maybe just trying to set up for the run back on the old scaling matchup in the mid lane. The old Azir Corki. It would give their composition some of that late game scaling that they need since they are running with like a Draven Kled right now. Now I see though, Rogue I think most likely to pick their jungle here. Can just go for blind Azir. Obviously going to be a solid pick. They've taken the Zoe and the LeBlanc away. I think just expecting Febiven to go for the Corki in response and giving Inspired the luxury of last pick, something I'm not very used to seeing, but given the Gragas and Sejuani are banned away, it does make some sense.
So Jarvan is really high priority right now for Rogue, I feel, just because outside of the Azir Sec and the Kled ultimate, they don't really have reliable engage, and I think that's something that their comp is missing, which is why I really like the Gragas Sejuani bans, because that's something that those two champions get. So maybe they're holding off on just snap grabbing the Jarvan until they can for certain see the jungle matchup and feel comfortable there for Inspired. Because I mean, maybe he gets really confident and tries to run his ult off.
Maybe. I think Jarvan for the opposite side isn't incredible. There's a lot of ways to interrupt the EQ in there. Obviously, the ulti is very good against the Draven, a champion who naturally lacks an escape, but not nearly as good against other champions. Misfits really taking their time on this one. Want something powerful enough early to slow down some of the picks that Rogue have taken out. And it is the Trundle. Okay, I respect it.
I mean, not a lot of options left. Also a really good dueling and skirmish jungle for the jungle pool kind of left open and available. The thing about Trundle is that he actually has decent gank access onto bot lane, at least when he's played in the LPL. So even though it's like an Aphelios Tom Kench into Draven set, there, I guess, is that potential that you could try to punish Draven set or step forward. And we said it was going to be an aggressive jungler. I called out the Jarvan. It's instead going to be the Pantheon that Inspired showed in his final week of the LEC.
And to be fair, this is a pick we forgot about completely, because when I asked you, I was like, all right, Frostgurn, you predicted all the bans for me. What's the first pick going to be when we were prepping behind the scenes? You're like, oh, it's Aphelios or Pantheon. And then we didn't see Pantheon at all, has slipped through the bans, has been invisible up to this point, but we know what this champion can do. We've seen what Jankos has done with it in these early games, especially when there's aggressive lanes for him to play around. So I feel like if you're Misfits right now, you have to be very nervous about this early game.
Well, yeah, you also look at what the bot lane, Draven set Pantheon, the top lane Kled Pantheon, like, it's really scary. And the thing is that Rogue seem to only fall apart, at least in this series, when Misfits were able to challenge them, contest them in the lane phase, and start putting them behind. That's how some of the top teams have taken down Rogue. If Rogue, again, get an even map state into mid to late game, that's where they're most comfortable, that's where they're consistently going to be making the right calls, and that's where Rogue fans want to see their team pick up easy wins.
Absolutely do. Let's get right into Game 3. And here we are, right back on to the Rift one more time. Both teams finding their first win of the series over the first two games. That means we're on to the best of three. But Rogue, we're going to cut this one short as they're already getting aggressive here on the level 1, knowing that they're stronger in these early fights. They're looking to assert some dominance here in the jungle.
Yeah, just muscling in. Inspired has the oracles, so we'll see if this is actually where their start point's going to be, if they're just gathering information for Inspired's pathing on where Razork is actually going to start. We've already seen some cheeky attempted level 2 ganks, and I'll say attempted level 2 dives. It didn't go so well the first time around, but we'll check in on Inspired. Because he is on a Pantheon, he does do the Talisman, he's not as reliant on doing kind of buff-to-buff jungle pathing starts. He can start on either Wolves or the Raptor camp or some of these bigger AoE camps and start trying to springboard through his jungle by clearing all of these smaller camps and trying to just be about getting those timers up as quickly as possible rather than being reliant on the big buffs.
See, it looks like it is
the start.
Exactly, as predicted, Frostgurn, it will be the Wolf start here. Set and Draven making their way to the bottom side of the map. They are going to be able to get lane priority here, as Denik and B-Boy have opted to leash instead. So already a small advantage to the bottom side. May not amount to too much quite yet, but we're going to have to see if Razork wants to rear his head there on the bottom side of the map. It might be a bit too early for a Trundle at this stage, given that he has not taken the pillar, but have to see what's going to happen.
And we've seen this jungle path, the one that Inspired is doing, from guys like Jankos and Selfmade. And again, we'll check what he does, but what Jankos likes to do is he takes the smaller camps, so the Wolf camp and the Raptor camp, completely ignores red and blue, and by clearing these timers as quickly as possible, you're maximizing the respawn, so you're farming as quickly as possible and also getting into position for potential dives, which Jankos has done multiple times, like this.
And Kled very good at diving. Obviously, the reset when he demounts on tower aggro could allow them to continue. Razork is running straight to the top lane, though. Looks like he sniffed this one out, but it's just 2 ships passing in the night. Inspired will be spotted. Razork sees him, and that means he has permission to start up the buff, and this will give Razork a small advantage as he's slightly ahead on his 3rd game clear.
Yeah, super good communication there from Dan and Razork. What they probably saw was that Finn was slow pushing or slow stacking a crash into Dan's tower. And again, this isn't a new play that we've seen in the LEC. Multiple teams have done this before with the Pantheon jungle, so Misfits were able to sniff that one out, pull their jungler, Dan disengaged from the tower, and averted disaster. So just sacrificing some CS, but not getting dove.
And it's very, very critical that Dan give Finn that respect, because while Game 1 was very much just like Finn felt very irrelevant, Game 2 was a story of Finn dominance, and now Inspired getting a little bit more aggressive here as Rogue send 3 members down to make sure that they can have security around this Scuttle Crab.
And normally we see this combination with Larssen and Inspired's Olaf, but loving the Azir combo where Larssen gets like perma mid lane priority and then just allows his jungler to bully in the river and swing out into these side lanes.
And obviously you saw on your screen there some of Finn's very disgusting numbers from the previous game, and I like to see that Inspired is putting some attention on the top side now that this matchup isn't nearly as won in Champion Select as the Ornn Pantheon was originally.
So good. Double crab. Really nicely done in terms of Rogue's like first 4 minutes. And this is something we talk to other teams. They say that Rogue's like first 6 to 8 minutes is usually very clean, and that can really decide their games. They usually come in, they always have a clear-cut plan. Yeah, they went for the dive. The dive didn't pay off, but Inspired didn't miss a beat. Using wave priority and wave state really well across the map as here's the wrench in the plan, TP.
Big commitments here. Snare's going to come out as well. Dan now off to the side. Killer has come in. Hansama now needs to run away. Hansama taken out. That's going to be first blood. They're looking to 2. Are they going to donate both to B-Boy? That's the big question. May give one over to Dan, but no. B-Boy going to be the happy benefactor of 2 kills on the bottom side.
And the potential for Trundle to gank bot lane is really strong when he's on blue side because of how you can get the pillar behind them. And of course, it was then helped out from a very deep